Welcome to Gambo City Video Podcast. I'm Russ, and that's Zach.
Hello.
And we have another kind of buffet style. Like it's been a while, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of stuff in the like physical media space, the retro space, all these things that we kind of talk about a lot. And so we did like a third of everything that we were going to do last time.
Yeah.
I think by the end of that, you could start hearing the impacts of my gin and tonic, and so when we called off, I was like, "It's probably for the better."
Yeah. I was randomly in North Carolina and randomly found this bottle, ONW. I have no idea what ONW stands for. America's most famous forgotten distillery, whatever that is. But it's quite nice.
Nice. Which is not gin. It looks like whiskey or bourbon.
Yes, it is bourbon. Yes.
I still have not stopped coughing for like a month and a half now. So if I disappear, it's because I'm trying to mute myself when I'm coughing.
I just visited friends down in South Carolina that have a 5-year-old, and she was just getting over being sick. My friend, one of my friends was getting also like full-blown sick, and the other friend was starting to get sick. So I cannot actually believe that. Knock on, I have no papers, wood, I guess. I have no. I can't believe so far I have not. Because as you know better than anybody else, it's funny because he was complaining about this, like, yeah, Elizabeth gets sick, she comes home from school, and then I get sick, and then the cycle starts, and I'm like, now imagine my dear friend Russ, who has 3 children and a wife that teaches.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just like, so the cycle just
and I've had ears, nose, and throat stuff since I was like
exactly
12, and so it's like, just my body just like it embraces it. That's just
yes, normality.
Also today I mowed our backyard, and it was like really crispy out. Like it hasn't rained here in like a week. Actually, that's not true. There was a little bit of rain last night, but like very little. And so I was like mowing the lawn, and like every time I would like stop to go get a drink or something, I just had like sneezing fits, because they're just like, I'm basically cutting the grass, and it's immediately in my nose.
You just need to. I mean, that's actually one of the reasons you should, like, if I don't have a lawn to mow, but I would just be like, N95 masks always now.
I gotta start. My big problem too is that like I've been trying to mow it more frequently than I would like. Like I don't love mowing all the time, but my sister-in-law who lives across the street found a tick in her yard, and it's just like, okay, so I got to kind of keep an eye on that.
I'm telling you, everybody needs to get rid of the lawns. I'm hashtag no lawns.
I got you know what I found in my this is probably not for the podcast, but I was mowing the lawn, the front, yesterday, and I found half a squirrel. I don't know what got to it, but I was just like, something was in my yard. It's not my dog, because my dog is exclusively in the backyard, and like she doesn't even like going on walks. When we take her on walks, she's the most ridiculous animal. Like she gets plenty of exercise, because we have a friend across the street who, like, her dog is Poppy's best friend. And so like I'll get just a text in the middle of the afternoon that's like, hey, can we come steal Poppy? And it's like, yeah, of course. But like she doesn't like going on walks, so she's never in the front because the front's not fenced in. So it's definitely not our dog. And so I'm like, okay, either it's the neighbor's cat, because the neighbor has a cat that's an outdoor cat. Not likely with a squirrel. It feels like
probably a hawk.
Yeah, that's what I was. It's like a hawk or a fox. We have foxes in our neighborhoods once in a while. But I just like one of those things where you're like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't hit that with the lawnmower. It was not, it was close, like, because it's long grass. And I was just like, and one of those wonderful things where you're like, I'm going to do this piece, and oh, look, all the flies are going there now. Good. Thank you, guys. You're telling me where the next piece is. But so we we got through about a third of our.
So segue.
Yeah, it's a segue.
What's the segue from half a squirrel? Let's see. What can we do?
Well, we got half of our list done last time, so that's the part of the squirrel that the hawk got, and now this is
Yeah.
the other part that I had to
There you
clean
go.
up. We can start with the one that you just sent me over, which is the Hustle is doing an article about younger music listeners, Gen Zers, embracing cassette tapes.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing because like we existed on that cusp where we grew up with physical music. We grew up with CDs and tapes.
Yeah.
And to some extent records. Although to me, records always seemed like the cool thing because like they were not part of day-to-day life for most of my life.
Yeah, no, they were the thing you borrowed from your parents, your aunts, or uncles, or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
But in any event, we also are just at the right age where when we were in our late teens, early 20s, Napster and stuff started to happen, and we started to get like digital music happened right when we were kind of in that sweet spot where we were buying a lot of music. But folks younger than us, like there's a whole generation or two of people now who have grown up with music being primarily a digital thing, like where you don't own the physical artifact.
Very temporary, which it's not even just the digital. You don't know the physical, but it's a temporary thing because most people. I don't think most people are buying anything. I mean, I haven't, like, to be fair, I haven't bought anything in ages since I signed up for, I'm on YouTube Music. Yeah.
I still buy, if it's an artist I really like, I still buy CDs from, often from Amazon, which is a bummer because like I try when possible not to buy media from Amazon, like something that like, it's like I could get it at Barnes and Noble. I could get it someplace else.
Yeah.
The benefit to Amazon for me is that they have that auto rip feature on like a bunch of different record labels.
Oh, cool. They still have that. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, they don't have it for everything anymore. I don't know if they ever really did have it for everything, but it seemed that way.
Yeah.
But in any event, like I bought the new Stones record, which came out the same day as a new Gaslight Anthem record. And then it was like a week later was, I want to say, a Green Day album.
Yeah.
And Stones and Gaslight Anthem were both auto rip titles, but Green Day was not, I think is how it broke down. But in any event, like if you buy from Amazon, they'll just drop it in your digital library. And like obviously you don't own it any more than you do any other thing that you buy digitally. But if you've got the disc and you have it delivered for free to a downloadable, burnable format like Amazon Music, it's like, to me, that still is like kind of the best of all worlds.
Yeah, well, certainly, yeah.
And the way I listen, the way I engage with music, the way I listen to music is that I listen to a lot of albums and I'll listen to the same stuff over and over again. So it makes sense for me. Like I certainly don't begrudge anybody who, a lot of people our age were the ones who first started kind of existing on mixtapes and then like buying singles instead of albums on iTunes and stuff like that. And like I don't begrudge anybody the way that they choose to listen to music. But the way I listen to music, it tends to be like I'll just listen to a record until I can't stand it anymore.
Pretty much the same. Like, yeah, no, I mean, that's actually something with the YouTube Music. Like I many times have been like, okay, I finally need to give this up because they keep bumping up the prices. I think it's like 12 or 13 bucks a month now or something like that. Thankfully, I don't actually know how it comes out of all my accounts. It's one of those like things where I'm like my Amazon Prime account, I actually still don't know where the money comes out of.
Yeah, me either.
But it's never stopped, so I'm not going to mess with anything.
Yeah, same thing. Like I don't see it come out.
Yeah. Which is probably a really bad thing.
Yeah, seriously.
But I'm sure there's some people like that are listening. Just like, oh my God, this is why they're always broke. But no, it's because we both work in journalism. It is it's one of those like I got so burned, which my conspiracy mind is like this was part of the plan. Right. I got so burned by oh my God, what was it? YouTube, the Go YouTube's like buy platform, where
Oh,
you could buy music.
yeah,
Isn't it Go? Go
maybe
Music? I
it
don't.
was Google
Google
Play.
Play. It was Google Play. Yes.
Yeah,
There you go. That I don't know where any of that music is, and I was buying a bunch of music on there. I was buying
yeah,
singles, I was buying albums, I was kind of buying a lot of stuff that I had lost or redone ages ago,
yeah.
and I
I'm
had.
sure it's like I'm sure there's like a library
Well,
on YouTube or
they
something.
here's the thing is that they did a like you have like 100 days. It's
Yeah.
very weird because I remember distinctly where I was when I got the email. I don't know why. I was in the which is also like adds to the like the retroness of it. I was sitting in the shopping town mall
Oh man.
um uh uh restaurant or the food area, the food court.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I remember this. This is very weird. And I was like, oh my God, because it was like heart racing, where it's like, oh my God, I have like hundreds. I didn't
Oh
have like a
yeah.
crazy amount of music, but I had hundreds of dollars worth of music on there. And I'm just like,
Well, and
how do
also
I
they had
get
a
this?
thing on there where you could upload your music.
Mhm.
And
I
so
had a bunch of other stuff that I purchased ages ago.
mm,
I've spent more money on music digitally and also physically because I also don't know where
yeah.
half of my CDs are. Um, that I don't want to, I try not to even really think about it anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but it is one of those like that kind of burned me on anything digital. And also just the fact because like I'm a photo video person. So like the idea of like keeping stuff on some random hard drive or keeping something on my laptop is just a non-starter.
Yeah.
Because I already have, I mean, I was just literally, I'm continually running out of my hard drive on my laptop has already hit its like peak. It's 250
Yeah.
gigs. It's an Apple, of course. So it's
Yeah.
and thanks to Adobe, where I have Premiere, Photoshop, and a couple
Mhm.
other things on there that I kind of need to always have on there. Basically, that and the operating system takes over like 200 gigs worth of my hard drive space.
Yeah.
So there's literally no room for anything else. So it's just it is what it is at this point. It just sucks because
Yeah.
like I'm trying to get back into um being like giving up on like supporting musicians by their music and just being
Right.
like okay I want to have the swag
Yeah.
get the t-shirts get the whatever else and and support them that way because that money actually does usually go to them
Yeah.
but it doesn't go to but as opposed to streaming where it's just like it's a
Yeah.
yeah, it's a minute, tiny step
Yeah.
above literally just pirating.
Yeah. It's funny, the Booth Brothers, the guys who did that Lost Media song we talked about last
Mhm,
time,
mhm.
were doing an interview where they were like, yeah, like nobody makes any fucking money from streaming.
Yeah,
And so like as they're coming back and doing new music for the first time in however long, they're like, it's fine because we're just used to not making any money from our music.
yeah, yeah. It's really depressing.
The one thing that's
Um,
interesting, I don't know if it's in this article, I didn't read all the way to the bottom. It mentions Taylor Swift
yeah,
having released her most recent record on cassette, or
yeah,
her most recent album on cassette. And we'll get into the semantics of nomenclature a little bit later because we wanted to talk
yeah.
about that stupid Reddit thing I did. But if I remember correctly, and I'm pretty sure I do because I almost bought like all three of them. She had like three
Yeah,
different versions of this album on physical media, and
yeah,
each of them had like a song that the other versions did not have.
yeah.
And they were only sold for like 3 days in the lead up to the record coming out. And so it was one of those things where I was seriously tempted to just buy all three cassettes and then sit
Yeah.
on them for a while and then put them up on eBay.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
because I'm like, oh, like how many Taylor Swift fans have an easy way to copy a cassette tape to their computer?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
this song is going to be a pain in the ass. And so
Mhm.
I thought about that, and I didn't want to spend $100 on Taylor Swift tapes. Um,
Yeah.
but
Well, it looks like I'm actually surprised. It looks like she's been doing this for a while. Because I'm looking at eBay here and they have Taylor Swift 10 album tape sealed cassettes, and they're only $57
well,
for one, two, three, for 10 of them. So, which I
nice.
just said.
Here's the
So that's
thing.
actually not terrible.
Um, I mentioned this. I don't remember if we were recording or not yet, but like the idea that young people are finding cassettes is not really new, because when Guardians of the Galaxy came out,
Yeah.
and the Walkman was such a big part of the story, they released the Guardians soundtrack on tape. And I can't remember exactly what the number was, but it was like, this is the best-selling cassette tape since 1999 or some insane thing. And it's like, well, yes, there's a reason for that, but like, yes.
Yeah.
But basically, as a result of Guardians of the Galaxy, like that has been really it's been repopularized for like a decade now.
Yeah.
And like obviously, like the last little while, as everybody is talking more and more about how much digital media sucks and how we need to like embrace physical, I'm sure that it's gotten even more pronounced.
Yeah.
But like the reason Taylor's been doing it for so long is because Taylor's basically entire career has happened post Guardians of the Galaxy. And again, I don't want to give too much credit to just the one movie, although I do remember very distinctly there were 0 cassette tapes at Soundgarden in Syracuse before Guardians came out. And then like Guardians came out and they put that little stand at the cash wrap with like Guardians and like 3 other tapes.
Yeah.
And now
I think with Taylor Swift is also that she always has had some level of like retro.
Well, she has that like that aesthetic where she's like, oh yeah, and the Polaroid thing, and yeah.
Even though she's, she was born in what, 89 was it? And so like she barely had the like any of this stuff. So it's funny, but she's
but I would argue it's probably for somebody who was born like that far into the 80s, but like still on the cusp where these things existed for a minute, where you could like go to Target and print photos. She probably had the same relationship with a lot of the stuff that you and I had with records, where it's like it's not every day, it's kind of special. And
like cassettes were still in cars up until 2005 or something like that.
Something crazy.
Like, I still remember. I'm trying to remember what was my first car that didn't have one, and I remember being kind of pissed off. Even though I didn't have any cassettes.
Even now, like you can still get tape adapters for your car, like at Target. And it's like, I don't think that piece is a byproduct of the like post Guardians rise of cassettes. I think it's literally just those they never went away.
Well, everybody still has. I mean, there's still a ton of people who still have like cars from 1997. Hondas and Toyotas and Subarus still exist. So I wish I still had my 2001 Subaru. More raise a glass to you. But anyway.
But yeah, it's really interesting to me. I was really kind of into the idea of, because like Taylor's thing of having like a track on each one that wasn't on the others, it's like it felt kind of vaguely like exploitative, but only in the same way that like variant covers on comic books do.
I mean,
and so
it's exploitative if you decide it is. To some extent, because that's been a thing that's been happening for ages. Though there's been different I remember different CD editions coming out of things. And you could buy the basic CD edition, or you could buy the double CD thing,
and also like there's a 0% chance that all of those songs weren't on YouTube by the end of the day on the first day the record came out. Because like I joke about how like most of her fans are too young to know, to like have an easy way, not to know how, because that sounds infantilizing, but to have an easy way to digitize their tapes. However, like when I say most of a fan base,
all it takes is 1
million people. All it takes is one.
It's not like when we were with DVDs were coming out and things like that, and it's like, okay, well, I do have to buy the director's cut edition of this DVD because it's the only way I get the director's commentary or whatever special edition feature. I mean, it's like Fight Club is always like one of the better examples. It's like, okay, you could buy the paper bag edition and get all the good stuff, or you could buy the dirt basic one that had nothing and maybe a trailer or something like that. And
it's funny because that movie, like there's a $5 Blu-ray now that has all those bonus features on it.
I know it sucks.
But I still have,
because there was a brief moment in time where, because I had the original, I'm sure you did too, like the original paper bag edition, and that fucker was worth like $150 on eBay for like 5 minutes, and I missed the opportunity to sell it because I was like, I mean, I want to sell it. I need the money, but I don't know if this will ever, like, because the way DVDs were looking in that exact moment, it was not exactly like a good thing.
Yeah.
And the idea that, like, oh, maybe they will release a thing, but
I had the same thing with Tank Girl recently.
Mhm.
Like Umbrella Entertainment or whatever
Mhm.
announced the Australian one. I think they're called Umbrella, but they announced they're doing this like amazing like special edition Blu-ray with like art cards and a poster and a steelbook and all this kind of shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. But it was like it was a little pricey for me. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but it was like $60 maybe. And then also like because it's Umbrella and they're in Australia, you have to like
Yeah,
pay to get it shipped.
$40 shipping. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, I can't do it. Like there was like one or two new featurettes. It was like 90 seconds worth of content that was new. But then I found out that had I known like 2 weeks earlier, my copy, the Shout Factory copy from 5 or 6 years ago, when it went out of print, it had been selling on eBay for like $150.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like,
And so,
oh, I could
yeah.
have just sold mine, gotten the new one, and still had $50. But like by the time I found that out, it was already like the new one had made some waves. Some people had like written about it. People knew it was not a print anymore. And all of a sudden mine went from being worth 150 to being worth like 60. And you're like, okay, so I'd still have to pay shipping. It's not worth it.
Yeah, no.
So before we get into the rest of our list, I'll do my Reddit thing because it was like this like it's kind of plays into the semantic argument that I was saying about like how you refer to tapes and records and albums and things. Like so there was a question on like r/VHS the other day, and it was like, why do people say VHS players? Don't these kids know that VCR is like the accepted terminology?
Yeah.
And like I don't think that there was any like ill will in the original person who was asking.
Yeah.
But like there was an awful lot of like very clearly like old white guys in the comments who were like, oh, these fucking millennials, like this is they started calling records vinyl, that kind of So like I like had a whole big rant that I made, and then I shared it with you because I was like, I don't think anybody but you cares about this. And then you were like, oh, we should talk about this on the show. And I'm gonna like skim through my answer and kind of without. I linked back to like a bunch of the other users who were talking about the stuff and like kind of tried to contextualize some of this stuff. But basically, my argument boils down to, first of all, it's not a new thing. Like when we were kids, everybody called it a VCR, but also calling things a video player or a tape player back in the 80s was not
a VHS player.
Yeah,
I definitely called it a VHS player.
I don't think I ever did, but like I wouldn't have batted an eye.
Well, here's the one asterisk, and I think you maybe get into it, but like I very distinctly, my house always had when my aunt's house where I watched most of the movies and stuff like that, there was a VHS player and there was a Betamax player. And so there was a difference, and like it was a very VHS player and a Betamax player. So
that's something in my rant on Reddit. It's like, and what I'll do is I'll just read this first paragraph, and then I'll like skim the rest because the first paragraph and the last paragraph are basically my point, and then there's a whole lot of words where I'm like, holy shit, I talked for a really long time about this like stupid etymological issue about something that 7 people care about. I said, like I said, video player, tape player. My family definitely said VCR, but nobody outside of a marketing material ever called tapes video cassettes. Like I've never heard anybody actually say that in my life. I don't think I ever called my VCR a VHS player, but I absolutely spent my childhood calling my Betamax machine a beta player and my CED disc player a disc player. It was about clarity. It made the object of the sentence more obviously understood to the person who was listening. Obviously, nobody calls CEDs discs anymore because in the intervening years, there have been a great number of other more widely used disc formats introduced. But like, I think VCR was a compromise term established by the industry so that it didn't matter what format you were talking about. Any video cassette recorder, whether it was Beta, VHS, U-matic, could all be referred to kind of universally with one term. But now, 30, 40 years later, like non-VHS formats are basically unicorns in the US. So it's just not necessary. Similarly, we now have 25 plus years of people referring to their disc players as DVD players and Blu-ray players, which kind of normalizes the naming convention of media name plus player.
Yeah.
Somebody in the thread had pointed out that there were VCPs, video cassette players, that were marketed. And so like there's this argument that like there's a semantic thing there, but like also like I owned one at one point. I remember hating it. I don't think I ever saw more than like 3 in use. But I really don't think that plays a big role in the rise of VHS player for younger or casual collectors, because like I don't think there's a significant market. I think honestly the market penetration for VCPs now is less than there is for Betamax. Like somebody pointed out in the thread that like VCPs were meant to be low cost alternatives. Like it was cheaper because you couldn't record. But like cheaper by 1995 basically meant shitty plastic pieces. I'm guessing that like almost none of them still work because they all had substandard components.
Yeah.
Somebody, like I said, somebody had like been really snide about the etymology of like the vinyl thing, like people calling records vinyl. And it's just like, I mean, there's just no there because like during the years when records were not being sold in mainstream stores and it was all like collectors, like vinyl rose as like how a lot of people talked about records in general, because like even when records were not being sold in stores, we still called albums records. You would say like, oh, the new Rolling Stones record came out, and it's like there's no record anywhere in this building. It's all tapes and CDs. And I pointed out there was a record store near us on St. Mark's. I don't remember the name of it. It wasn't Kim's video. It was the other, that one with the big staircase.
Yeah.
I really distinctly remember them having vinyl records on the sign in the same way that like RST Video had Nintendo games on the sign.
Yeah.
But VHS collecting, like as a hobby, as it has become like a thing in the last few years, hasn't been widely called tape collecting or tape trading in a while. Obviously there's the inherent confusion because of like audio cassettes are also like cassettes that are on magnetic tape, and they like if you call something a tape, like there's always been some possibility of confusion of like, oh, like music or movie. To me, like when I said a tape as a kid, I always meant VHS tapes. When I said cassette as a kid, I always meant audio cassette. But like anything that muddies the waters is just kind of chucked. Like the point of language is clarity. So anything that makes it less clear what you're talking about gets chucked. Again, like the childhood beta player. So for these and probably other reasons I can't think of, as the hobby has risen in possibility, became VHS collecting. And for ease of communication, like younger members of the audience who didn't have VCR in their lexicon as a kid, or people who would let tapes fall out of their life and then came back during this VHS collecting era, have just like embraced the now popular naming convention established by DVD and Blu-ray as media plus player. And again, this is a weird semantic argument, and ultimately, like I spent way too many words like arguing with people on the internet about like why it's fine actually that Gen Z calls a VCR a VHS player. Like I don't understand why people are upset about it. Like the original question was like, did people collectively forget the word? Is everyone getting stupider? And it's like, no, it's just incredibly easy to say like the thing that plays my VHS is a VHS player. Like I don't say it, but who gives a fuck? Like I don't understand.
Hence Blu-ray player, hence DVD player. Like, I mean, those are the words that we use continually because there's a difference between the two of them, and that's what they fucking do. Yes, the Blu-ray player also plays a DVD player, a DVD as well, but we don't call it a disc player, a high definition disc player, because that's also a different thing. Because HD.
Yeah, there was HD DVD, there's 4K, there's like it's like no, like sometimes you just gravitate to the thing that is the most precise because
Yeah.
it's the thing that most clearly communicates what you want to say without
Yeah.
people getting confused.
Yes.
And again, that was probably more time than we ever needed to spend on this. I definitely was more words than I needed to waste on it on Reddit, but I really like, I get so annoyed by other people who look and sound like me, shitting on anybody under 30
Yeah.
for like having the audacity to be interested in our stuff. It's like, you know why any of this stuff is still available to buy? It's because people under 30 decided they give a shit. Like, I mean, obviously, like the old tapes would still be around to buy secondhand, but the reason like Vinegar Syndrome and Lunch Meat and that other one who did Yoga Hosers and stuff, like the reason that new movies are still being put on tape is because like people younger than us decided it was cool.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's not serving the seven guys in their 40s and 50s who want to, you know what I mean?
Who refused to
Yeah.
move to DVD or something like that, who
And so
only
like I
wanted
don't
to,
know. It's
yeah.
and again, I've seen this in comics, I've seen this in everything for years and years. It's just like just be okay with the fact that
Yeah.
other people who aren't you like the things you like. I promise
And,
it won't
and
hurt.
and in
Like,
fact, like if somebody wants to, I mean, like, I mean, Star Wars is always the greatest example
yeah,
of this about, but things like, but it's just like if somebody wants to add to the kind of economy that it requires to keep a fandom alive, I'm
yeah,
fine with that. I'm
no, for
happy with that.
sure.
If somebody just wants to thinks it's really cool to do cosplay of whatever random fucking character from some 80s thing and they don't really like know or like know the lore, but they've seen the movie and they love the movie, then fucking awesome.
Yeah,
If it's good, then cool.
yeah,
And that's something I will always say. Also, like allow casual fans to exist,
yeah,
as a person who has become over the years went from somebody who was continually called a pretentious asshole, well, maybe not the asshole as much, if you're out there, Anne Marie, I see
yeah,
you, but pretentious, she never called
yeah,
me an asshole, but pretentious to becoming a, oh my fucking God, I hate all fandoms. I've stopped, and not to the point of nihilism. I'm still like the fact that people are like having complicated feelings about there being a new Bad Boys movie coming out, and I am like,
yeah,
I seriously, if I had the money, I'd be like, fuck it, I'm getting a Bad Boys tattoo. Like I am that level. I've also
yeah,
figured out, I'm like, I really am that level of fan of Bad Boys. Like realize it's one of the few films in the like any franchises or anything like that that I've been in the theater opening night since I think Bad Boy. I'd have to double check of when the first Bad Boys came out, whether I was genuinely too young to have. I probably was, but 95. There's a really good chance
sounds
I
about
was in
right.
theaters for that, but yeah.
I mean, you'd already seen A Boy and His Dog at that point, so.
Life Life as a Dog,
Oh yeah, sorry.
in yeah, no, in five, yeah, the movie with the 12-year-old, yeah, full front, or not full frontal but frontal, yeah, yeah, Lasse Hallström,
Yeah,
excellent film if you haven't, like, My Life as a Dog, yes, I saw that at 5. It was one of my earliest films I ever saw in theaters,
yeah,
very funny. But I had seen, I I have stories that I saw. I don't distinctly remember it, but I have stories that I had seen Die Hard in theaters. I don't have a memory of it. I do have a memory of seeing Die Hard 2 in theaters, which is one of
right.
my favorite films. But yeah, anyway. But like let people like things.
Yeah,
That's always my fucking
that's really the
thing.
bottom line.
And figure out
Uh,
how to like welcome them. Like if you can figure out, would be like, oh man, be excited. It's something I was just having a conversation with a friend. Um, about the whole, oh man, you haven't seen this yet
yeah,
thing. Not the high fidelity reference of it.
right, but yeah.
But the like this is actually a discussion our mutual friend Anne Marie ages ago.
Hmm.
We used to go, oh my God, you haven't seen this yet, because she just had not seen movies. She just wasn't one
Right.
of those people. She read books all the time. She was a fantastic education teacher and probably got like fucking 4.0 at SU, and everything like that. But um but she would continually say, she would be like, well, you're pretentious. And I was like, well, no, it's not pretension. It's that I'm super excited to get to introduce you. I get to be the person that gets to show you
Yeah,
Hudson
exactly.
Hawk. Or I'm the person who oh my God, you've never seen Lawrence, whatever random, you haven't seen A Lucky Man, you haven't seen Lawrence of Arabia, whatever the film is.
Yeah.
I get to be the person that does that. And like that's something about like about fandom that I think is desperate. And I totally understand. It's nuance between the difference between, oh man, you haven't seen that yet, and
Right.
oh man, you haven't seen that yet, is doesn't work through the internet.
Right.
It exists in kind of, you have to know a person,
Mhm.
and you have to, and everything. And so that's been something that like the internet has ruined. One of the thousand
Yeah.
casualties or
Yeah.
tens of thousands of casualties that the internet has done,
Well,
is
and
fandom.
for me too, like
Yeah.
that aspect of it, like even taking away somebody who was a close friend like Anne
Yeah.
Marie,
Yeah.
like that was one of the appeals of working at a video store,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, or like a comic shop or anything that's like a
Yeah.
special. Like I still have, and I'm sure I've said this on the show before, but like I still have a note down in my workshop that was like, I want to say it was in Laura, the Hitchcock.
Mhm.
It was either in that or in The Man Who Wasn't There, but it was like a note from inside of a cassette tape, like a
Yeah.
video cassette. And it came back to us, and it was like these girls who used to walk around the store with us, and like bunch of pretty girls roughly our age, and we would like walk around the store with them and help them find their 5 for 5. And
Yeah.
it was always like, oh, you like the height of cinema is death becomes her and Captain Ron.
Yeah.
And so like let me find you something that like somebody who likes those might like, but that like you probably have never heard of, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And you
And
wouldn't be necessarily open to if someone didn't recommend it. That's always
right,
been kind of
exactly.
my thing, where it's just like, I mean, like I forget who I was having a conversation with about Man Bites Dog.
Yeah.
And it was just like, no, there's zero. Like
Yeah.
you read the description, you read anything, like there's obviously a very small segment I would not recommend to that random group of people or whatever, but like, oh well, if you have like, you got this really dark sense of humor for,
Yeah.
whatever, like if you liked, oh my god, what's the vampire TV show,
Vampire Diaries or
yeah, I know, like really nailing it down, the comedy, the
oh, True
funny,
Blood. Oh,
no,
oh,
no,
oh. What we do in the shadows?
yeah, What We Do in the Shadows. Or it's like, oh, if you got kind of a dark sense of humor, that's literally just the first thing that came to
Yeah.
mind. Where I'm like, oh, if somebody like that, you might like. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a crossover. It's not a full
Yeah.
it's not a full circle, but there's a Venn diagram of like,
Yeah.
okay, you might like the darkness of this. Obviously,
Yeah.
you got to be kind of okay with child murder, but like you do.
Yeah. I will
But
say, just to finish the
yeah,
thought,
sorry, yeah.
you didn't cut me off because I stopped, but like
Mhm,
when you were like, oh, in that random group of like
mhm,
the reason I'm like I still have this note because I kept it, 20 years ago or whatever. But
yeah.
also later on it became more valuable because like that group of girls was my
Mhm.
now wife and her 3 friends.
Oh shit, I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
So like I have this note from long before we were ever a couple that was just a
yeah.
really nice note
Oh.
thanking us for like recommending some movies that they never would have given a shot.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
um, but like
Now it's the reason why I have to explain to people, because we have a share, like back when you could share a Voodoo account,
oh
kind of,
yeah,
and share movies. And like I was visiting friends, and like, oh no, it was actually, I was out I was in Portugal, and working with Greg Ballast, and he was just like, why do you have all these films? Like what? and and I was like, well, it's Russ's.
because they haven't taken Russ's away yet. I'm sure they
Yeah,
will
but no,
someday.
but it was like, no, but they were mostly like there was a couple films, because it was more his taste of movie
Yeah,
is shares with Callie, with your wife.
yeah,
And so like it was like, why did you have this? Like, this is not you. Like Joe Dirt
yeah,
is not Zach. And I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, it's Russ's wife. But yeah.
And I mean, I've always dated people who liked entirely different. And again, like it's fun because like then you can like find stuff through each other.
Yeah,
Um
100%.
I I remember my college girlfriend who I don't name when I'm talking in public. Um Like, I'm not trying to be mean. Like, I don't.
I know. Just, yeah.
We didn't. Our breakup was not good. I don't like to like
Yeah.
identify her, but like she at one point had like seen a trailer or a review or some I don't know what, and like for a movie that she really wanted to see and was like, "Hey, can you try to find this? Like, can you
Yeah.
see if it's available in the United States? Can you see if there's
Mhm.
whatever?" And I went online and I found a bootleg VHS on eBay.
Yeah.
Because this movie had come out exclusively in the UK and was not available in the US in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And so I ordered the bootleg VHS tape. We got it. We watched it. We were like, "Holy fuck, this movie's amazing."
Yeah.
Because it was Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, nice.
And then 8 months later, so 8 months after we had already bought the tape and had seen this movie like 10 times,
Yeah.
it got its US release and we got to go
Yeah.
see it in the theaters. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, I probably wouldn't have seen that. I mean, maybe if I saw the trailer and was like, "Oh, it looks kind
Yeah,
of,"
but it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't
but
a monster advertising.
yeah,
I think that probably is the way I even knew about it, because I don't think I had seen the TV show, his TV show yet.
no, I
At that
definitely
point,
didn't see
yeah.
Spaced
I mean, it
until I
certainly
was
didn't have
younger.
a. It didn't have a. I just the only reason I might have seen is because my aunt is so has had like the BBC
Yeah,
catalog and all that stuff, and that whatever the version of that is since it was a thing,
yeah,
and so it's like
yeah. I
I
didn't
don't think she's a
see
Spaced fan. Yeah.
like I don't remember when Sean came out. I think 2004 or
Mhm.
five.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't see Spaced until 2008 or early 2009 because I remember I
Yeah.
was in New York
Yeah.
and I was living with a different ex-girlfriend,
Mhm.
and Warner Brothers released the box set,
Yeah.
and I remember like being at 40 Market Street
Yeah.
and having like they sent me the press kit,
Yeah.
and like
Nice.
me and a bunch of the people, because like the girl I was dating at the time lived in a former brothel, and so it was like this long hall with like
Yeah. Yeah.
10 bedrooms or something.
Yeah.
And I remember like going down to the shared living room and watching Spaced, and the
Yeah.
first time I saw it was with like the pot dealer who lived down the hallway
Mhm.
and that Sony music publicist who slept across the street, or not across the street, across the hallway.
Yeah.
Um, that guy passed away and was very sad. That was
Mm.
right after I left New York. He passed
Mm.
away, and because I was always the guy with a digital camera,
Yeah.
like my ex-girlfriend reached out to me and was like, "Do you have photos of Rory for like this service that we're doing?" And I was like, "Holy shit, yeah, here's
Yeah.
all my." I don't remember what happened, but it was like really like out of the total blue. Um,
Yeah. Mm.
but like anyway, that was the first time I saw Spaced was in 2008 or early 9, sitting on that like couch in that weird little like bulb that they had at the end of the hallway where
Yeah. Yeah.
the living room and kitchen were. Um,
Mhm.
I'm sure that apartment has to be closed down by now. There's no fucking way it's still.
Oh, I mean, it's probably the building was probably taken down, and it's probably a high rise, and with a $6,000 a month one
Yeah, I
bedroom
mean it's hard to
condos
know
and
because
things
it's
like that.
Chinatown. So, but
I
it
mean,
is.
Chinatown is like it is wild. The last time I was in China, like walking through
Yeah,
Chinatown, and it's like it. Remember Little Italy? It was a big controversy that
yeah,
like Little Italy was being kind of taken over by Chinatown in quotes, like which was just kind
yeah,
of basically, market businesses and things like that,
yeah,
like businesses that never actually opened, but like,
yeah,
sold things or whatever, distribution hubs and things like that. And
yeah.
then it was down to one street. And now Little Italy is basically, or Chinatown is basically having this, long ago had the same problem.
Mhm.
I mean, the East
Where
Village
it's all
where
warehouses and apartments, and there's no
yeah, yeah,
actual
yeah.
Chinatown.
Little Chinatown is basically nothing like it. And oh my God, the East Village is depressing because nothing exists the same.
The last time I
Atlas,
was
the cafe is
the
still
last time
there,
I
but
was
it's
on
under
St.
different
Mark's,
ownership. Yeah.
everything on that street was like corporate owned.
Hmm.
I mean, I think the supermarket, the St. Mark's supermarket's still there. St. Mark's Comics is like in a mall in Queens or something now,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and still called St. Mark's, which I understand, like for
yeah,
brand recognition or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Also, like it's you were named after the street,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
um But
That's sad.
yeah, I have looked and looked, by the way. I wish that I could ever find anything on like Google Street View of 2008, 2009 when that cafe had the giant wiener dog.
Yes, I know.
I don't know.
It is insane because I mean, like, I don't know how I don't have a photo of that
I know.
at all. I mean, I probably do. I mean, at one of my, a couple dozen
Yeah.
hard drives that I have around here, who the hell knows? But yeah, no, it is
I've looked a lot, more than I care to admit.
I would, reach out to our former mutual friend, but I'd rather not. So
I'm trying to think of who that is.
Sander.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
Yeah. It's funny because you say our former mutual friend, and I think of like somebody who one of us still talks to instead of like somebody who.
Yeah, neither. But anyway,
Yeah.
physical media.
Did we? I have it in bold, so I think we might have talked about it last time, but I don't remember having a conversation about Killers of the Flower Moon. Did we
No, I
talk
don't think
about?
we weirdly never got into it.
I think we started talking about it, and so I highlighted it in bold, and then we
Yeah.
trailed off to something else. Killers of the Flower Moon is apparently not getting the Blu-ray release that everybody was expecting.
Yeah.
This is really mostly notable because Scorsese has been one of the bulwarks of like, I'm always going to have a theatrical release. I'm always going to have a disc release. I'm always going to like, he's trying to keep the old traditions alive, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so the idea of, Joe Blow reported that like this might not happen. Like that the one that was announced has been redacted, or not redacted, retracted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just stuff like that's frustrating because the guys like Scorsese and Spielberg who have the power to like bully people into doing this.
Yeah.
Like we need them to actually do the thing,
Yeah.
And it's funny because like I tend to be a lot less precious about the theatrical experience than I am about home video. And it's just because like at the end of the day, to me, physical home releases are a thing that more people can like afford, that people can like do more than once, that people can, whatever. And so it helps spread indie film if it's normalized that, good indie movies are still getting a disc release, even though they're indie and they maybe didn't make a shitload of money at the box office. So this stuff bums me out, even though I personally I haven't seen Killers of the Flower Moon on Apple. I was waiting for it to come out on disc, honestly, because the last handful of like Scorsese movies I just watched on disc instead of watching them during the 1 week that everybody was watching them on whatever streaming service he did it with.
Yeah, it's I mean, especially for Flowers of the Moon, because it is genuinely a beautiful film, in a lot of in so many ways, and kind of a very important film as well. That I mean, I don't necessarily have any fear that it's not like Tubi or something like that, where like Tubi one day it might go away or get bought by somebody else. Apple Plus is, at least in the way that we talk about forever when it comes to the internet, going to be around for. But on the other hand, Apple Plus doesn't make any fucking money for Apple, and there's going to be a certain point, like all corporations in 2024, that they go, okay, well, it was really nice to have this thing, and we're done with it, and so we're going to get rid of these things and we'll do these things, and obviously it's going to go somewhere else. It's a Scorsese film. It's a I mean, like, it's not going to disappear the way that, like, I mean, like we talked many episodes ago about, the Hulu's The Princess, disappeared for a while. Thankfully, it's back, but still, no physical release, which sucks.
I will say,
but it is,
in terms of this one specific thing, it's worth noting that in the time since this article was written, in the time since we recorded our last episode, a deal in principle has been reached for Paramount to be acquired. Paramount
Yeah.
have half of the rights along with Apple. And Paramount, like since Apple doesn't do physical disc releases, Paramount
Yeah.
are probably the ones who balked at the low pre-orders.
Yeah.
So once Paramount has been purchased and is not as deeply in debt as it has been for the last 4 years,
Yeah.
I could totally see this turning around and Paramount being like, no, it's worth doing now that like
Yeah.
we don't have an existential crisis going on.
Yeah.
We'll see. I
I
mean, we'll see how much that plays in, but like certainly for me, like I work for Paramount,
yeah.
and um, for the last several weeks, the conventional, like the prevailing wisdom has been that Sony was going to own Paramount,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to talk about it on the podcast or anything because like it didn't seem like a great idea for my day job, but like I was very, very concerned about like what that would mean for a lot of Paramount because like Sony cannot own, as a foreign-owned company, they cannot own a broadcast network in the US. So Paramount necessarily would have had to spin off CBS. And like
Yeah.
technically, both my company that I work for and also Paramount Plus, the streaming service, are nested under CBS Interactive, a piece of CBS. And so it becomes like
Yeah.
I'm sure that they would have wanted to keep Paramount Plus. I can't imagine Sony did not want the streaming service that has like the third highest
Yeah.
subscribers.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where like you're looking at stuff and going like, I can't predict what's going on in my life in the next 3 months because like
Yeah.
if Sony buys Paramount, then it becomes like everything's very up in the air about like what does the next 3 to 6 months look like as they try to like slice and dice away the pieces and try to sell stuff off so that
Yeah.
they can get rid of CBS without losing their shirts.
Yeah.
The current deal that looks like it's going to happen is Skydance, who is a production company owned by a bunch of different people, including I think David Ellison's involved with them, James Cameron's involved with them, Gail Ann Hurd's involved with them.
Does Tom
And
Cruise own? Because I mean, like all the Mission Impossibles, like all
he
his films, like
probably has at least a piece of it. And that's
yeah.
the thing is like when you look at some of the Cameron movies that we've just either distributed or co-distributed that
Yeah.
were through Skydance, when you look at Mission Impossible, it's like it makes perfect sense that like if we need a bailout, Skydance is like, okay, well, we have money and you're our biggest distribution partner. Like
Yeah.
we can figure something out. And so like with Skydance, the impression I've gotten, and again, it could be totally wrong, it could still be super stressful, but the impression I've gotten is that Skydance does not want to radically overhaul Paramount. They just want to put some of their people in charge because, like, clearly our executives don't know how to spend money. And so, like, that to me, like that seemed good. Whereas the Sony deal, broadly speaking, did not seem good for me. Like personally, me, I felt like there was a non-zero chance that comicbook.com could just cease to exist one day. I don't think that's likely under this deal. So like obviously Sony does have a vested interest in physical media. They're taking over Disney's distribution and they still make a ton of DVD players and Blu-ray players and PlayStations that all have disc drives. But I can totally see Paramount now breathing a deep sigh of relief and being like, oh, we don't have to just stop spending money altogether. Now we can like go back to being a company. And looking at something like Killers of the Flower Moon and reevaluating, okay, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to make it happen?
Yeah. No. Sorry, that's very interesting because I guess that Tom Cruise, this is a very, very side to side in my brain. But Tom Cruise was leaving Paramount to work with Warner Brothers.
That's right.
And so now, like, but I also can't see. Weird. I can't remember a Tom Cruise film that wasn't attached because Reacher was, and also the new Reacher series is Skydance as well. And so was Maverick.
I mean, he has worked with Warner before, and I don't know if this movie was Skydance or not, but they Warner distributed Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
Sony instead of Paramount, I believe. No, it was Paramount that did Vanilla Sky. Never mind. But the other thing is, like, honestly, a lot of these things still have weird grandfather clauses where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you have an overall
It's
deal
just
with
interesting
Warner
because
Brothers
I
now.
actually thought, I mean, I thought for ages that Skydance was
Was
Tom
Tom
Cruise's
Cruise's
production
company.
company because I
Yeah.
was just like, oh, it's attached to every single thing he does and that sort of thing. But
I
just doing a very quick Google, I'm not finding like the article that says, oh
yeah.
yeah, he owns or he is part of the deal or whatever.
I
Anyway,
thought
doesn't
that
matter.
Cameron had more ownership than he apparently does,
Yeah,
just because like when all his movies got remastered in 4K, I got a press release from Skydance,
yeah,
and they were like, "Oh, you're interested? Here, I'll just send you digital copies of like 4 out of the 5 movies." Like they didn't
yeah.
send me Titanic, but they sent me everything else. And so like in my brain, I was just like, okay, so these guys' full-time job is to make sure that we all love James Cameron.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but uh, but yeah, I mean, the Killers of the Flower Moon thing is dispiriting because like it
Mhm.
does seem like the kind of thing where it's like,
And
and again,
so, I mean,
they're
yeah.
they might just be gearing up for a Criterion release. They certainly, it's funny because the article that you sent me from Joe Blow
Mhm.
says like, I don't know if there's money to be made. I don't think Apple and Paramount are going to want to sign it over to Criterion. But it's like
Here, yeah,
the Criterion collection is not the same as selling
yeah,
digital copies.
yeah,
Like, first of all, Criterion does not include digital copies with literally any of its discs, as far as I know.
yeah, 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 which sucks, but yeah.
Um, and secondly, like, you know, the idea that like, well, if there's money to be made selling it digitally, then I don't know if they'll send it over to Criterion. It's like there's money to be made selling it to Criterion, and
Yeah,
those are distinct audiences. There
yeah,
is obviously some crossover, especially when you have a really artsy movie.
yeah,
But like, I think Roma, which Scorsese produced,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure that movie only ever got a physical release through the Criterion Collection.
Yeah.
Um, I
It's
want to
also
say,
there's limited edition. I mean, like there is like a lot
yeah,
of kind of
yeah, you could
asterisks with
license it
that.
for 6 months and
But
have like,
here's the thing as well. Also, you can kind of put a price tag on it that you can't
yeah,
do on other DVDs.
yeah,
But here's the thing as well. I mean, like what I based on fucking nothing. But like what I think is happening here is the fact that Apple Plus realizes that they have a handful of products, a very small handful of products, unlike
yeah,
Netflix and unlike even Amazon Prime, which doesn't have, which weirdly is much, much larger, but still also has probably the same number of properties that people are like, I would sign up for that, or I would, it's
yeah,
only a thing. And as long as you want to watch, it is a thing, especially considering how much money, I mean, Flowers was not a cheap film.
yeah,
I mean, you watch the film and you're like, yeah, it wasn't a cheap film.
yeah.
But um,
Well, and I mean,
yeah,
it's you hit it on the head, I think. Like, I do think that there is some element of like, do we want to put something out on disc when we only have 5 things that people
yeah.
routinely sign up for?
There's a date on that. I mean, like what I was kind of getting to is that
Oh
there's a
yeah,
date where there's got to be some contract somewhere, kind of with anything.
yeah.
Like I mean, I don't think we ever got into it, but I mean, I actually did we? I forget if we got into Godzilla minus one
The fact that
because
it's on Netflix or
no, the
just
fact that it wasn't getting a physical release, it wasn't really, it literally, I didn't read, and it was something I was kind of paying attention to, um, because I really wanted to see it again. I wanted to
yeah,
show other people this film that I saw I was lucky enough to see in theaters. And it just appeared on Netflix. It was just
yeah,
like, oh, by the way, and like I just literally, and as far as I can tell, everyone at least on Twitter was like, what the fuck? Like
yeah.
this
They
is on
didn't
Netflix
announce
now. And
anything. It just showed up one day.
yeah. And so that was like everyone that kind of like looked at looked at what like deals were and things like that, we're looking at, well, it's getting, every article that I could see was kind of matter of fact, it's getting a 2025 release at some point because of its weird contract it has with the Godzilla properties and the American version versus
Yeah,
whatever. And so I have no idea how the hell that happened, and there's still no real conversation as far as I can see about a physical release, but which is now torturing me because of course I want to buy it. Um,
yeah.
Even though I have Netflix, but I'm like, I don't want to watch it on I don't want to watch it on Netflix. I want to watch it in 4K.
It kills me because I have a region-free DVD downstairs, but I do not have a region-free Blu-ray or 4K.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time I see something like that, I'm like, is this the moment? Is this when I'm gonna finally?
Well, the problem with the Godzilla with the -1 is that it doesn't have, as far as I can tell, it doesn't have the English subtitles or the or a dub. Which, as far also, I would stay by recommendations. I would stay from the dub, away from the dub on Netflix, unless you're like a real big person who hates subtitles. Because I've already seen one person pointing out a translation difference. Which
also I heard from a friend that there was one character whose like dub voice was not great. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. But then there's a scene where they have like a scream at a really important moment, and the scream was so comically silly that it completely took all the wind out of the scene.
Yeah. And it's one of my big problems with the dubs. I mean, sometimes when you're watching a really terrible, like on Netflix especially, like a lot of the terrible like European films that you're like, okay, this is about this random flood or about trolls or something like that. I'm like, I genuinely don't care about how bad comically or whatever, but I also don't want I want to enjoy this film. I don't want to read subtitles, which I I feel guilt about it at least. And I don't care about that, but I'm like, this is, I mean, like I if you haven't seen it or haven't kind of read about it somehow, it is like I cried at this film. I did a Godzilla film.
Yeah,
because it's genuinely good, and it's heartbreaking because there's a whole, unlike which I don't want to discredit the like the massive Hollywood Godzillas, which I also genuinely love, especially the TV show, but it is fucking great. Yeah, no, I was just the movie is a dramatic film with Godzilla. Like you could remove Godzilla from this film and it would be 45 minutes or it would be 60 minutes or something like that, as opposed to whatever the film length is. But it would be a fantastic film that's worthy of watching either way, because the human arc of it is, and the kind of discussion about it is fantastic. And the actors are great, and the dialogue, everything across the board is really just genuinely a great film. But Godzilla makes it a fucking crazy ass motherfucking film.
I've heard. I want to see it. I still haven't, but I've heard nothing but good things. Kevin Smith was like talking about it as like his favorite movie of the year, kind of thing.
I saw that. Yeah.
No. And again, like it's funny because people kind of give Kevin grief about the fact that he's positive all the time and that like he loves everything. And he actually just did an interview with Mike Rosenbaum over at his Inside of You podcast. And he talked about that. Like, he talked about this idea that like people are like, why don't you ever like say anything, like talk about movies you don't like anymore? And he talked about how like when he was in his 20s and early 30s, he used to constantly go on like the View Askew message boards and just like spend all his time like movie poop shooting and bitching about how like all the stuff he doesn't like and why he doesn't like it and why it shouldn't exist or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's just like, man, I'm getting older. Like, why do I want to spend any of my time on this earth like shitting on somebody's art because it wasn't my favorite thing? I'm just going to talk about the stuff I like.
I mean, one thing about like doing this, the more and more doing the podcast, because I definitely was a person who had like very strong feelings about films.
Yeah, me too, for sure.
And I think, and I still do. I mean, there's certain films that I think, I mean, you can flash back to my discussion of Joker. But like there has to be some sort of, this film is bad for cinema, bad for discussion, bad for whatever politics, bad for whatever, that kind of thing, as opposed to or it has to be something like I'm angry at this director, this this something very particular that's about it, that it's kind of like you failed the adaptation, you did whatever, like there has to be something that I'm kind of like, no, there's a focus of it, and I fail at that sometimes where I'm just like, this is fucking terrible. Like TV shows, I do it a lot more on, but because I think they just have so many opportunities to kind of fix their thing, as opposed to a film, you have one chance and that's it, and that's a terrifying prospect of like, oh my god, should I include this, should I not? And it's something that I kind of have tried really hard, especially with Twitter and social media, really hard And I fail a lot, to be fair, of trying to be like, no, I only kind of want to talk about the good things,
Yeah.
and I feel weird about that. But like, thankfully, like it's kind of funny. I've just whatever shitty algorithm or whatever that exists still on Twitter, I
Yeah.
found kind of the version of movie Twitter that is just like I fucking love. Like there's a handful of people that just like Tony Scott like go on like this
Yeah.
one guy that I follow on Twitter. I wish I could actually I follow him, but like I cannot remember which account it is. And he's just like a fucking Tony Scott fan. And he
Yeah.
spent like 3 weeks just going through Tony Scott films and like sharing the best clips and stuff like that. And I'm just like, holy fuck, I forgot how much I fucking love this guy.
Oh yeah, for
And
sure. He's
like,
great.
and it's
He's
just like,
great.
and it, like the same, I think the same guy, I think it's the same guy is doing Bad Boys right now, and he's
Nice.
like doing a rewatch and pulling clips from that and then whatever. And I'm just like, which is making my like I'm so hyped for like I'm going Thursday
Yeah.
night or whatever it is for Bad Boys 4. It's 4, right?
Ye-
Yeah, 4,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
remember we had a whole conversation
Yeah,
last time about the fact that the previous one was called Bad Boys for Life, and we were like,
yeah.
just
Missed
just wait,
opportunity.
do it on the
Yeah,
next one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. But I am so fucking hyped. I
Now it's called
like,
Ride or Die. Nice.
yes, yes. I can't handle how, and I'm like so excited because I mean like there's so few films that I'm just genuinely fucking hyped for.
Yeah.
And like even like and I love the I just tweeted out that like Bad Boys 2 ran so that Fast and Furious could sprint, because it's like Bad Boys 2 didn't walk, it fucking
No, no.
sprinted right into the insanity. But like I hope people are like, okay, did we really need another one? And I'm like, I want 7 more. That's
Yeah, I
exactly
mean,
the number of
I
what
don't
I
think
want.
that's, I mean, again, like you never know because right
Just
now
yeah,
there's so many big franchises are failing.
I
But
want to
like
see them with walkers. I
in
want to see them in wheelchairs, like
yeah,
doing this
in
shit because they seem to like have fucking fun. That's the biggest thing is they seem to have fucking fun doing
yeah.
it. Everyone involved is having fun, and that's the number one thing. Film could be fucking like that's my biggest. That's one of my biggest things. Like Hudson Hawk,
Yeah. Oh
everyone
yeah.
involved in that film seems like they're having a fun time
Yeah.
and having it. And it, like can have the flip where it's just like something like Anniversary Party or
Mhm.
even like a fucking Lord of the Rings, where it's like it's a much more serious film, but it's like I can watch that film and I look like everyone is really just enjoying it. They may be
Yeah.
fucking hiking up the side of a mountain like Viggo Mortensen with a sword and a full like
Yeah.
suit of armor, but they're fucking doing it. And you're like, they fucking like movies. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like you watch some of these films, you watch some action films sometimes, and you're just like, no one seems to want to be here.
Yeah.
And that's always my biggest thing where it's just like if I the moment I get that feeling in a TV show, like I was just trying to watch, like I'm again, listeners of this podcast know that I'm a J-Lo fan.
Yeah.
um and I just was trying to watch Atlas, the like supposedly according to Netflix the biggest fucking you know blockbuster of all fucking time.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like 1 billion hours or something they're claiming. Supposedly more people watch that film than like fucking Furiosa and
Yeah.
every other Netflix film before it or something like that combined, whatever. I don't know how they calculate their numbers. Again, big fucking asterisk there. Barry
Yeah.
Bonds size asterisk there. And I go, I should love this film because I forget the name of her co-star in the film, this fantastic actor. Like there's so many people, the factors that are film that like whatever that's going on in the film, and I'm like, it looks like she's servicing a contract
Yeah.
of the number of films she has to do with Netflix. That's what it has a feeling of.
Although I will say,
Yeah.
if that movie's successful,
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Right.
There's a very handsome young actor named Gregory Cohan in that
Hmm.
movie. I don't know if you recognize him. Uh, you've met him.
Okay.
Greg played Doug Jones in The Velocipaster.
What?
Yeah, The Velocipaster is in that movie. And he's kind of heavily featured, apparently. I haven't watched the movie yet, but
Oh my God.
apparently he was originally supposed to be like an off-screen character with like a voice. And then Jennifer Lopez took a shine to him, and they were just like, "Sure, we can put you in some scenes."
Oh my God. I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to well, I mean I haven't finished it yet, but that's amazing.
yeah. So like, I'm it's one of those things, and we've talked about this before, where it's like, no, I just nakedly do not like if a bad movie succeeds and some good people get a paycheck out of it,
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'm like, that's fine.
Wait, who is he? Maybe I'm not.
I'm
Maybe
not sure.
maybe he
Like
hasn't
I said, I haven't watched
appeared
it yet.
yet.
I just know like
Yeah,
this.
no, I'm just trying to remember who.
He's got a mustache in this one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, I'm gonna have to reset
mm.
and maybe rewatch it.
I think
Because
he has his
that is awesome.
Velocipaster 2 mustache.
I
But
hate it. They don't have any photos of him from the movie. But that's
if you
awesome.
go to Greg's Instagram account, he's got a bunch
Okay.
of. I don't know if there's stills from the movie. I'm sure there probably is, but he's definitely got a bunch of pictures of him with the rest of the cast at the premiere.
Yeah.
Um, and that like I said, it's just one of those things. Like I
Well,
saw
I
that
mean,
he was in it, and I'm like, oh, the Velocipaster's in this.
and one of the things too is that like again, I mean, like we've tried really hard to because we deal with so many we used to do this a lot more as like the
Yeah.
C level D level kind of direct to video whatever
Mhm.
streaming films, and it's like it has to be really like kind of bad. Like there has to be not just like comically bad, but there has to be a kind of for us to criticize it in any real way. And like I just think that like that's the way you should kind of talk about cinema more, is
Mhm.
that just kind of enjoy it, especially in this day and age where um it's not just it's just not just like
Yeah.
studio films that are getting releases. Every once in a while you get these
Mhm.
weird films that get or, you know and also the fact that like
Yeah, Velocipaster just becoming like a TikTok trend. And
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
or I'm just even thinking about the fact that like it is tough to get um an actual eyes on a
Oh yeah.
lot of films now. I mean, fucking hell, Furiosa didn't make bank,
Yeah.
which was shocked. I think it shocked everyone.
Mhm.
And I mean, like I've seen it. It shocked me that it didn't, because it's a fucking great film. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a very, very, very good film.
Mhm.
It's not in the realm of Mad Max. It's not in the realm of Fury
Very
Road.
road.
Um, but it is still like it is still like wild to
Yeah.
watch it, especially in theaters. It should have done much, much better, but it's
I'm
tough to
curious
fucking get
if
eyes on
we'll
things.
see if that movie will have legs.
Hmm.
It'll be interesting to see because like there's a bunch of like kid stuff coming out
Yeah,
soon, and I could totally see people being like, okay, fuck it, like I'll go see Furiosa while the kids are in Inside Out
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Obviously, I guess the chink in that armor is that Bad Boys is coming out next week,
yeah,
and I would say Bad Boys probably has quite a lot of audience crossover with
yeah,
Furiosa.
yeah.
So, but like I don't know, you look at Elemental, and
Hmm.
Elemental like they pronounced it dead on arrival,
Yeah.
and then by the end of the summer it had outdrawn like every other movie that opened that day and had
Mhm.
gone it's like in the top 10 or something of Pixar releases.
Just they gotta fucking. I mean, look at as somebody who is. I'm look at. There's a lot of films that I'm very happy that they go quicker to streaming,
Yeah.
because I mean everybody was kind of having this argument on Twitter a couple weeks ago, like kind of when Furiosa released, was just like, why aren't people going to the movies? And everybody's kind of having their like smart person analysis, and I'm like, I'm a single person. I go to the movies. It costs $16
Hmm.
to buy the ticket online, which is
Yeah.
insane to me still. Because I mean that's
Yeah, for sure.
still in where I live, it's we have a $12 or something less minimum wage. And so it's still like I don't think a movie ticket should ever be above whatever the area's minimum wage is.
Yeah.
That's kind of a rule for me. Um, and
Yeah.
then if you can't, if you want to bring popcorn, if you want to like have anything, it's another $20 for popcorn and a soda
Right.
and bare minimum. And so it's almost a $40 venture to go to the movies. Yeah, no, I'm gonna sit at home. I can buy the movie,
Yeah.
buy it for $25 in a month. I'll
Exactly.
just wait, especially considering most people have, a 60-inch plasma at home or
Yeah.
whatever it is that they have, or they have kind of built their own, especially during COVID, built their own theater. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, people are going home. I mean, God forbid I have to go to see I remember the last time I went to see a movie and brought a kid and a friend.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, I can't even, I don't even know how much money it is for you to go to the movies.
Oh, it's the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like it's like it should not be that movie should never be that thing, and there should be at least an option. I get like Friday nights, Saturday nights, like yeah, okay, those are kind of I don't want to go to that time anyway. I go Thursday when a movie releases. I go Thursday at 5 p.m. the first release possible because people aren't out of work yet or whatever. Or I go if it's not something that's like Bad Boys, where I want to see it opening weekend. If it's something I can wait a little while, I go on a Tuesday at 1 p.m. Because I work, I make my own hours as a broke freelancer. But it is completely ridiculous that this idea that like I mean never mind it's the fact that like film should not be unless you're making the
Right.
big Captain America film or the big Iron Man type of film, like unless you're making a film that's like okay we're secure in the fact that we're making $250 million or $300 million. No film should fucking cost over $125 million even in 24. I'm sorry, like Furiosa. I get it. I unfortunately I think that like it may be the last film like that we see for a while. Or fortunately,
Yeah.
like the type of film that's not definitely not a mainstream film. I mean, it's two steps away from like Terry Gilliam getting $150 million budget. I mean, like George Miller always will be that person where it's just like, you're gonna give me the budget, I'm gonna fucking spend it, and I'm gonna make the
Oh
most
yeah, for sure.
insane fucking film ever. And then also like go make Babe 2,
Yeah.
which will make its money back 17 times over. But which is why he weirdly is going to probably end up being one of history's greatest directors up there with
Yeah.
Spielberg and Fellini and whatever. But
somebody said it in a really succinct way that I thought was a bummer, which is that the failure of this movie at the box office and the overall narrative of the failure, more than the actual numbers, but the narrative means that it's basically guaranteed George Miller won't be able to make another Mad Max movie before he dies, which is like really a shame.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, well, I mean, I think the biggest thing that like, and that I'm not seeing that discussion, something I've like on the internet, that is the reason that this film, that there won't be another Mad Max film of this, the kind of like the second trilogy, is because there's no second life for films anymore, which is the kind of the really depressing thing. I mean, like, I think if the books, if I assume if anyone's ever going to write that book, it's going to be you. But if there's ever a book written about the kind of second history of a film, I think Dread was one of the first films that I would kind of mark that, where it's just like, oh, if Dread came out in 98, we'd be talking about it in the same way that we'd be talking about Road Warrior. I mean, like we'd be talking that film didn't do great at the box office, but got, the Crazy Life, Second Life on, on home video, or like in the same way that, it would give a career to everyone involved in the way that, Mallrats gave a career to everybody, and ever since then, because I mean, like I remember like you saw in theaters at the Comic-Con, and then which I'm still
I know.
I was outside. There was only one ticket for it, but I was like,
which is fucking wild when you consider like,
yeah,
who gives away one ticket to a screening anyway?
Yeah, no, I mean, totally understand. Totally. I mean, in that year in Comic-Con, that was still like the absolute tops of Comic-Con that we did, because that was San Diego, right?
Yeah, that was San Diego.
Yeah, it was San Diego.
And also that was like, we weren't huge yet. Like, and the site was not huge yet. So like there was a lot of factors in there, but it is just wild to think about. Like,
it's just one of those, like, I was so close to seeing the opening. I ended up seeing it like, because you came out and was like, what the fuck did I just watch? Holy shit, it's amazing. And then I was like, okay, the moment it hit Syracuse, I saw it, and I think we both saw it probably, but
I didn't get to see it again.
Really?
That was when I was in Binghamton, and
oh shit,
it did not come to Binghamton, or if it did, it was in town for like a week. and I remember like wishing that I'd had another chance to see it,
Yeah.
and like to see it with you. But I think that like whatever was going on, either you were out of town, or like we couldn't get to, like there was some reason that we couldn't get together.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, it's sad.
Yeah.
That
I agree.
I mean but that's something. But here's the thing too, is that we don't have, in the same way that we don't have, it's something that I continually harp on, is
Mhm.
that whenever Netflix says Atlas or Red One or whatever that
Rogue
not
One, or
great,
not Rogue One, Rebel
the
Moon.
red,
Oh, Red
the
Notice.
last rock film that
Red
he did
Notice.
for that said, oh, it's got 1 billion hours or whatever. And like, we don't have numbers in the same way that if, fucking Cheers, we know what the Nielsen ratings are. We know what, even those are kind of iffy, whatever, in the same way that any polling data is iffy.
Yeah.
Well, and but we don't.
It's funny because like the only time that this ever comes up in conversation was like when Zack Snyder had his comment about how like more people watched Rebel Moon than watched Barbie in theaters. And it's like, yeah, but it's not the same thing. Like, I'm sorry, even if that is true, which I am super skeptical of, then like it's not the same thing, because like almost nothing on Netflix, and certainly no feature films on Netflix, have the kind of cultural impact that a tentpole blockbuster at the movie theater does. Furiosa has had more of a pop culture impact, and more people are talking about it than the Rebel Moon movies, in spite of the fact that like those movies have objectively, yes, probably been seen by more people, but like nobody's making a conscious active choice to go spend money on Rebel Moon. It's on Netflix, it's free.
I mean, it's also, again, it's there's a TikTok that I watched that like, it's about I think it's two producers that kind of have a discussion about things, and one of the things is that there's a woman and there's a guy on the show. It's actually a really great TikTok channel. But because it's part of a larger podcast and they just do pulls. But one of the things they were talking about is that what Netflix is asking for is for, I forget if it's second or I think it was second screen content. Content that they know that the person that's watching it will be on their phone. And it is in the background, which is fair. I totally get. Streaming is that for me. Like, that's what I watch. A lot of things I watch one time, and then I go, like Reacher is the greatest example. I have probably watched both seasons of Reacher 3 or 4 times each, which is a lot of fucking hours. Like, if I actually want to desperately, like, very sadly think about it, I watched it the first time on both, one time on both. Like, I watched it because it's a really genuinely a great TV show. I think it is really one of the best action TV shows to come out in many, 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 many years. I can't think of another one that's kind of like at its peak, which, there's not going to be a lot, because it's basically each episode is a fucking movie budget and everything like that. That doesn't happen a lot. But for the most part, every time after that, I'm on Tetris, I'm on Twitter, I'm on whatever. I'm not paying attention, but I just want something on the TV that I enjoy, that I've already seen, that doesn't have subtitles, that doesn't, it fits all of those things. And I'm like, I can leave the room and go use the bathroom. I don't feel as though I need to pause. And that is both good for me and it's good for viewers, but also sucks for when they realize how many hours that people watch it. I've watched Roma on Netflix once. I'm not quite sure. I probably, maybe eventually, if I see it, on sale, I'll buy the DVD. I'll buy.
I was gonna say the
Blu-ray
Criterion
like
sale will be when I watch it the second time.
But I don't know if I'm going to sit down and watch it again, unless it's literally I have someone that I'm like, oh, we really should watch this. And which is something I miss because I don't have. Unfortunately, I haven't made. It's very depressing. I haven't made a lot of new friends in the past couple of years. It's thanks to COVID, thanks to whatever, but it's just like, it is one of those things where I'm like, no, everybody who I think would watch anything. I'm not going to force. I have a couple, I'm not going to force Carrie to watch X number of random films that I'm like really devoted to, and I'm like, yeah, no, she's just not gonna like it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna like force her to be like, oh, Zone of Interest, you really should sit and watch it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna force a person to watch that.
Mm.
That seems cruel. But yeah. Anyway.
Um, I will say, and we can be brief about this, but like one of the things that was on the list ties very nicely into what you're talking about is Disney and Pixar announced this week that they are planning on having a long theatrical window for Inside Out 2. So what we were talking about before of this idea that like a lot of movies, it feels like the reason they have such a soft opening is because people are like, I'll just watch it in 6 weeks. Like I don't need to go pay $100 to see it in theaters when I can watch it on Disney Plus in a month. They're trying to pull that back right now. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. I simultaneously would like it to be a success, and also I'm super skeptical about it because like one of the things like the big appeal of streaming in general is convenience, and we're a really convenience driven culture. One of the like VHS collector pages I follow on Instagram has this image that they've shared, and it's like a tube TV with a VCR built into it, and on the screen is like these VHS tapes where the spines are like different studio and streamer logos. But instead of the logos, the words spell out something along the lines of the convenience you once demanded is now mandatory. But I really do think that like it is hard to take something away from the consumer that they are used to having and to not be punished for it. And so
absolutely.
I think that like I understand why they want to expand the theatrical window. I support it on principle, but also I don't know how well it will work because I do feel like people are just going to be like, why am I waiting 8 months for Inside Out 2 to come to digital?
I mean, it's one of the problems is that it has to be kind of something they all decide. Like I do hope that like the cabal gets together of this Hollywood studios and kind of goes, okay, let's slow everything the fuck down when it comes to things. Yes, some films, if we come out with a $60 million romantic comedy with Julia whoever the new Julia Roberts, I have no idea. Like, like the standard
Sydney
kind
Sweeney.
of thing. Yeah, Sydney Sweeney and somebody else. We can if that bombs at the box off in the first 3 weeks, then it can come out 2 weeks after that and will hopefully break even, or whatever the random cheap horror film is, or the what kind. Obviously there's different things, but I mean like for Furiosa, kind of the big action films that if they don't, I mean like there's a lot of big ones that like Marvel's coming out with in the next couple months and year or two that I'm like, I don't think they're gonna make it. Like oh my god, what's the Spider-Man villain? Craven. Like I think that film's gonna bomb hard.
I mean, it probably will. I will say, I think that prominently featuring Marvel in the title cards and the trailers and like cutesy little references to Spider-Man are not good for those movies. I think that like if you're going to make a Spider-Man movie without Spider-Man, you need to just design a movie that stands on its own, promote it on its own. The handful of people who know and give a shit that he's a Spider-Man villain can know that. But like, if that's how you're promoting it and Spider-Man's not in it, you're
especially when you're living in a world where we kind of have an idea that there's potentially no new Spider-Man film. Like Tom Holland isn't currently in production with anything. I mean, like anybody who knows,
it does look like he finally
looks the film. Also, I mean, like the biggest thing for me is the film. I like the character. The character. I think the character is worth making a film of, or at least having in a film.
Right.
I also despise villain films. I don't want films where villains are the main characters, or mainly the own characters, unless it's somebody like Venom who is, created or to be complicated.
They introduced him, like they introduced this version of Venom before Venom came to the MCU.
Yeah.
And so like you're basically just telling a story with this weirdo anti-hero, not trying to retrofit a Spider-Man villain into like and like it can work if you do it well. I think that the Loki show is one of the best things that Marvel has done in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
But and you can make an argument that WandaVision is all about the villain at this point because they've like just assassinated that character. Like,
thank God. I fucking hate that character with a ungodly level of passion.
I've never been a fan of Scarlet Witch, but I will.
Nothing to do with the comic books. None of the comic books that I read really. I'm sure that she was in it maybe at some point, but like I know nothing of her other than from the Marvel films, really.
Yeah.
And it's not a fault of
Olsen.
Yeah,
Lizzie.
Olsen. I was like, which Olsen was it?
Elizabeth.
That's what I was trying to remember. It's not a fault of her. She played the character as written, and she did that quite well. It's just I despise the way
and her brother gets to play Kraven now.
Yeah, my God, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you didn't think about that, huh?
Nepo fucking anyway.
But yeah,
this ECV becomes a Nepo podcast, describing where something that Zach has previously, I think, literally on the last episode, I did a small rant about like vaguely pro nepotism when it comes to Hollywood, but
anyway, I agree with you in terms of like the villain thing. Like it's really hard to do a villain movie and have me have any kind of investment.
Yeah.
Like I look at things like Maleficent or Cruella, and I'm just like, well, we know where she ends up.
Yeah.
Like one of the things about Wicked is that because the story is public domain and because they didn't realize it was going to become a multimedia franchise, like they were able to just kind of be like, well, The Wizard of Oz is kind of a suggestion more than it's canon. Yeah. And so like they were able to kind of mess with things that you can't mess with if you're doing Cruella and you're a Disney movie.
Yeah.
You know? And so like to me, like part of the thing, like so many of these things are basically riffing on Wicked. And because Wicked was this massive success and it kind of created a bunch of like weird little subgenres that came after it, you know? But like that movie was a that book was kind of a once in a generation confluence of like, this is a property every single person knows about, but very few people remember almost anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like most people don't really know anything about the witches. Like, and so you're able to like have a huge amount of flexibility that you simply do not have when it's like, oh no, this movie is about a Spider-Man villain. This movie is about Cruella, you know?
Yeah.
And so
it's also something that like, I mean, I think like I'm not a fan. It's not because I just literally have not consumed any of the Wicked media. So I don't know, but I mean, it's because very clearly they created something that is good. And so as opposed to a lot of the kind of, okay, we're going to take this villain and pump thing. I will say though, Cruella surprised the fuck out of me. And
I haven't seen it. I've heard good things.
I think it was literally because of Emma, that she was just really great in that role. And the story was very, very limiting. And it was basically more of a Devil Wears Prada kind of thing. And they really hard played over,
which is ironic when you consider that the boss from the Devil Wears Prada was also Cruella.
Yeah, I know. In the live action, which for some reason I guess we need one of everything now. I'm not looking. My villain turn may actually come out of the the live action Lilo and Stitch. I think that
Oh,
that actually maybe become when I like become some sort of like movie hating
yeah.
podcaster where I'm just like,
I love the
you
fact that
just
I
see me turn into a thing. Like,
drop a Darth Vader helmet down.
exactly, where I'm just
Uh,
like, this is my villain turn. I'm just gonna tell you all guys, this episode is where Zach goes very, very Zach often goes dark, but like this is the
well,
episode where Zach becomes
I
like, yeah.
I love the fact that like in all of the in all this behind the scenes photos,
Yeah.
they just have like the Stitch like cardboard cutout. um
I'm
like
consuming no media on it. If I see anything, if I do anything,
yeah,
like I have a vague idea. I think I've seen the photos of some of the main act of um oh my god. Um not Lilo. The main actress. Oh Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
Nani, is it?
Nani, thank you. I was like, Noni. Yeah, anyway. This is a quite fine bourbon. Anyway,
Uh,
this is the only reason I'll blame for not knowing Nani's name as a Lilo and Stitch person. But like I think I've seen it, I'm like, okay, acceptable. Like they didn't like I know there's been some complaints that she's like a little bit paler than the character or whatever,
right.
um but it yeah, I'm just terrified about the character design
Yeah.
because I don't know how Stitch becomes anyway. I'm not going to get into
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
We'll deal with that
When it comes,
nightmare
yeah.
when we get there. But yeah, so the Criterion and Janus films sell to Indian Paintbrush founder
Yeah.
Stephen Rails, which um as far as I can tell, is a very good thing, considering I feel like Criterion is one of those companies that we don't know is continually on the rails of like not existing anymore, which I feel like
Yeah.
this is the second. I forget whether it's the third or just the second, because I do remember like a decade ago, wanting, or maybe it was even longer than that, wanting to go to the like the Criterion theater in the building or whatever, and then
Yeah.
it basically went out of business when I was wanting to go there when I like moved to New York or something. And so like I guess this is probably good something. It's the fact that somebody wants to buy it and the fact that it's a recognizable, production, whatever. So that's at least
Yeah.
nice when it comes to, especially when it comes to physical media.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and again, like to me, it's like I think it's always like you always have to approach acquisitions with some
Mhm.
skepticism. But I do think like we've spent the last 25 years just like watching venture capital firms relentlessly just buy up and then destroy
Exactly. Yeah.
everything. And
Yeah.
so anytime like the buyer is somebody who's not like a cartoon supervillain,
Yeah. It's the
uh
it's the production company that produced and financed all of Wes Anderson films. So I
yeah,
mean, as much as I'm not a huge fan of Wes Anderson for the last like 10
10
years,
years, yeah.
it feels appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And again, it's kind of like it's the thing that we were talking about with Skydance and Paramount.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes you like end up like you end up having a buyer who has a really good, really obvious reason that like they want to keep your company healthy.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. They want to, I mean, I would assume that Wes Anderson is one of the few directors, like again, like Scorsese, who, has enough of the kind of post theater.
Yeah.
Um, People aren't buying this just on streaming
Yeah.
anymore. They want the physical disc kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's a positive sale.
Yeah. And I also think that like the Sony acquisition or the Sony not acquisition, but like Sony taking over Disney's physical releases may be really good
Mhm.
news for Criterion.
Yeah.
Because I do think there are plenty of Disney movies that people would love to see a Criterion version of. Um, up to now, there's been exactly one ever,
Yeah.
which came out last year, was Wally.
Yeah.
But like that's the kind. It's like if you subtract Disney being like hostile and precious
Yeah.
from that equation, I could totally see somebody at Sony being like, "Oh no, this is a great way to make some money."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
I
yeah,
mean,
I'm
I would want,
cautiously optimistic about the Criterion acquisition.
yeah. The last thing that I had that I wanted to, we kind of touch upon it a little bit, is, and this is not a physical media thing, just kind of a movie thing. It's a lot more political than we normally like even drift into. But Jeff Sharlet, who's a fantastic author, writer, um, he screenshotted this on Twitter from a New York Times roundtable with people who voted for and against Trump in the past. This guy's sticking with him. Pay attention to the stories he tells himself in order to do so. And the screenshot from the New York Times is Jonathan, 37, Florida, Black operations manager. And his quote is, you have to remember why Trump is the choice of millions of people. Trump represents a shock to the system. He supports don't hold him to this. His supporters don't hold him to the same ethical standards. He's the anti-hero, the soprano, the Breaking Bad, the guy who does bad things, who is the guy who is a bad guy but does them on behalf of the people he represents. And this has been like a fucking rant for me on a kind of a continual basis, where it's just like these TV shows and movies that, like The Godfather, like the characters in The Godfather were supposed to be bad. The character Scarface is supposed to be a bad person. And it's very clear that in the film that the director, everybody was like, this is a bad person, but we're just telling the story of this bad person. And then it slowly drifted into, and I think The Sopranos and The Wire, and kind of that era of HBO of more cinematic TV shows really fucking changed that and kind of broke America, and it broke the idea of what an anti-hero is. An anti-hero used to be John McClane from Die Hard, who is still genuinely a good person. He's doing everything for the right reasons. He's just breaking the like kind of boundaries of the way that like people are supposed to do things. And that I think there's a distinct difference between John McClane and Tony Soprano. And I would hope, but I'm not 100% sure that people really fucking recognize that. And the fact that like people like, I mean, my stepfather, like, I mean, not that much because he's just not like a movie TV show person as much. But like, I remember distinctly when that show was huge, it was because he's Italian American and, whatever, but it's just like, it was a big thing. I mean, there's people that see what's his nuts from which I think he did a great role. It's a great written show. I'm not criticizing Breaking Bad in any way, shape, and form. I'm criticizing the fandom of it, of not getting the fact that he's a bad person who's doing bad things for bad reasons. Well, and like,
the next extrapolation of that is the way that people shit all over his wife. Like the audience hated her because she was like not super supportive of him being a mass murderer. And you're absolutely right. Like the fandoms have, like, there's this, TV tropes has the idea of the rule of cool, that like sometimes like the specifics don't really matter because like as long as they make it look cool, we'll accept it. And I think the problem is that like we've gotten to this whole generation of people who've like rule of cooled away like absolute monsters. And like you talk about it, and like there's always discussions. It's like, well, can we really hold the filmmakers responsible? And it's like, no, we can't. But we can have a serious conversation about the audience and about what the audience means for culture. And like in the same way that like it's like, well, if Trump's doing awful things because he's doing it for the people he represents, it's like that doesn't make it okay. That just means the people he represents are really shitty people. And it's similar when you look at like the people who idolize Patrick Bateman or Joker or
Fight Club is, I think, one of the biggest. It was the first time that we really had a kind of discussion about this. And it, again, not shockingly, and correctly, came out of like kind of feminist talk of going, this is And like most of the talk I saw very early on about Fight Club was not negative in
Right.
towards the film, but negative towards the people who were putting up, Tyler Durden posters up on the wall. I
Yeah.
mean, mind you, we both had probably
Yeah.
Fight Club posters on the
We
wall,
had
but not
we had the cardboard
Tyler
standee from the
Durden.
video store.
Not what's that?
We
Yeah,
had the cardboard standee from the video store.
Yes, but like we also again, I always
Yeah.
like I one thing I'm very proud of that as a 21-year-old or
Yeah.
whatever, or 19-year-old when the film came out, I distinctly noticed, yes, Tyler Durden is the bad character. He's the
Yeah.
bad guy in this film. There's no one else. Yes, it is super fun to imagine,
Cutting the senator's balls off.
yeah, or just, it's super fun to imagine Project Mayhem and kind of in
Yeah.
general but he is a bad guy. He is not a
Right.
good guy. He's not even a good guy to Jack. So
Yeah.
I mean, like he's not even a good guy to the other characters that he is in the
Yeah.
film. And yeah.
But the problem is
So
we have a whole generation of people who
yeah,
grew up idolizing characters like Tyler. And
yeah,
when you point out, like, but he's not even a good character to
yeah,
Jack, they're like, who gives a shit? That guy's a
yeah.
cuck.
Well, I think one of the other things too is that like everyone consumes most of this media, like once they see the film or whatever. And this is very just I would say just the last 10
Right.
years, is that everything's kind of through a GIF, and through a brief moment or something like that. It's not through the film. But that doesn't excuse away the incredible fandom around Tony Soprano that still exists.
Oh,
And
yeah.
still, like, I just don't get how you don't talk about the fact that he's not a good person. He's not a good person to his family.
Yeah.
He's not, it's like there's always the like, oh, at least he's a good dad, but and then switch out. So like
Yeah.
you have a film like Nobody or something like that, like where it's just like, oh, he's a very good parent and he's a very good dad, but he's a, whatever, he's a killer in that
Yeah.
way. Maybe that's a bad example because he's not like he's responding to things. He's
Right,
not
yeah.
necessarily, I mean, I guess in the prequel. Anyway. But it is something that like I weirdly it feels almost prudish or very conservative to just
Yeah.
be like, this is one of my biggest rants about why so much of TV, so much of cinema that I don't like right now. Like Joker is obviously the
Yeah.
biggest example of that, and I'm not, again, I've already mentioned that fucking
Yeah. And
war
again, a
crime
lot
of
of
a
it,
movie.
a
But
lot of it is, I mean, some of the movies themselves are bad. Some of
yeah,
the movies, I think Joker is a movie that was made in bad faith. Like it's a movie that was made on this false pretense that like the guy who made 4 Hangover movies and
yeah,
has been able to make whatever he's wanted to make for the last 15 years
yeah,
couldn't get $20 million to do a little indie drama with Joaquin Phoenix, the Oscar winner,
yeah.
if he didn't couch it in Joker. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
I mean,
that's
I think he probably could get 20. He wanted 60 though. I mean, I think
yeah,
that's the difference. I mean, that's something that really sucks is I have a really, because I know that, he talked about this. Basically, he
yeah,
just had a script and changed out the names
yeah,
via, what was it, Speed 2,
yeah,
whereas that type of thing. And that, which also makes me even more disgusted with the director and
yeah,
literally everyone to do with that film,
yeah.
including De Niro. I have less respect for De Niro for doing that film than I do for him doing Meet the Fockers. But anyway,
But yeah, I just Joker notwithstanding, I
mhm,
do think that in most cases, like the movies themselves aren't the problem. It's
mhm,
a total lack of media
yeah,
literacy. And it's
yeah,
the fact that like you said, everything is communicated through memes, everything's
yeah,
communicated through social media. And so like part of the thing is that you have all of these guys who, again, I agree with you, like they shouldn't really be labeled as anti-heroes because for the most part, they're just villains who happen to be the
yeah,
POV character.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but like
Villains who are written well. That's
But
basically it.
they're written well, but also they are given all of the rule of cool moments.
Yeah.
So like most casual viewers, the
Mhm.
thing they remember from Fight Club
Yeah.
is the first rule of Fight Club
Yeah.
is you don't talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
Yeah.
And like that's Tyler. And
Yeah.
so like he just gets the transitive property of being the thing you like about the movie. because like they gave him all the cool moments.
Which again is like, and this is one of the most like pointed out things when it comes to Fight Club is the fact that's the whole fucking point. He says the cool thing,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he's
yeah.
the bad guy. That's the whole point of the fucking
Yeah,
film.
yeah.
Like, and it's just like, I mean,
And
it's kind of the
literally,
same.
like
Like
even more
anybody
so in
who's
the book, where it's like, oh, the whole thing is that he's trying to repress his like homoerotic
yeah, yeah,
attraction to this
yeah,
like blonde Adonis. Like,
yeah,
yeah, that's uh very much the point. And
yeah,
again, like that's of all of the things that we've talked about, like because
yeah,
like all of these to one extent or another, the creators are like, no, but we, and that's another thing. There's like a get out of jail free card built into a lot of this stuff because you'll talk
mhm,
about this to like a Sopranos fan or a Breaking Bad fan, and they'll
yeah,
just dismiss the criticism out of hand. They won't
yeah.
address the lack of media literacy. They won't address any of these because they'll just be like, well, no, everybody knows he's a bad guy. It's like,
Well then,
but
I, yeah,
you look at everybody else in the audience. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And so like I've seen that before. Like, and so like one of the things about Fight Club is that like it has it's doing the thing. Like the
yeah,
whole point of Fight Club is to point out the conversation we're having.
yeah, yeah,
Like that's what Fight Club is about as a like a meta narrative.
yeah.
And so like I give that one a little bit of a pass. And again, like it's definitely worth bringing up in this context because like
Mhm.
it's a big part of building us to where we are now.
Yeah,
That one and American Psycho are absolutely instrumental
yeah,
to like
yeah,
getting us here. But
yeah,
like at the same time, at least with Fight Club, it's like no, the people like not only did the book know it, but also the people making that movie knew
yeah.
what they were like.
It
It was
it's
a
yeah,
competent piece of art.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's nothing that you need to change about it. If you were to release it in 2024 with the same implications and same meaning
Yeah.
and so same all meaning, you could release the same film, and but it would probably still be taken the same
Yeah.
terrible
Oh
way.
yeah.
Kind of
Probably
and
even more so now.
yeah, I mean the like because one of the things, obviously, again, very particular to my kind of world of
Yeah.
journalism that I cover and everything like that, is that one of the Alex Jones, right wing kind of
Hmm.
fash friendly broadcaster who
Yeah.
currently owes $1.5 billion to Sandy Hook family members. He doesn't he's a big sci-fi geek.
Yeah.
He hides it a lot, but he loves Star Wars. He weirdly loves Dune, and like it
Hmm.
just which seems like a little too deep for him. But he talks about all these things a lot, and but one of the biggest things, he doesn't identify with the rebels.
Yeah.
He identifies with the stormtroopers and Darth Vader
Yeah.
and the Emperor Palpatine. Those are the people that he quotes. He doesn't quote Yoda. He doesn't quote
Yeah.
you know and so it's like it is something that's like kind of like been is when it comes to the cross between politics and this
Yeah.
discussion in general, it's been very interesting to watch, because that's something that people who follow him, as in track him and kind of
Right.
pay attention to him, not follow him as a person you follow or whatever,
Right.
as a leader, have been noticing for quite a while. There's a great podcast I talked about before, Knowledge Fight, have mentioned it
Right.
many times, that he loves the bad guys in
Yeah.
his favorite, what is very clearly his favorite film, because it's the number one thing that he talks about the most. And it's like that the fact that there's no self-awareness within
Yeah.
people that are, very political and very, that is something defining their lives, and the fact that you can't see, and the fact that you can't, you have to know. I mean, like, you
Right.
have to know that the stormtroopers are the Nazis. Like,
Yeah.
it's in the name.
Yeah.
Like, Darth Vader is the bad guy because he's the dark side. It's not, George Lucas did not write deep.
Yeah.
The
He's
metaphor
master of
is,
subtlety that he is. Yeah.
and I don't think he would be the first person to say that. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
the subtlety, it's not subtle here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's literally light versus dark. It's bad. Yes, there's later on there becomes some more complications, which is also this own like thing that I think one of the things
Yeah.
that like people hate about the new arc is that there's some complications. There's
Right.
quite a bit more like, oh, there is literally one of the, person on the dark side who may or may not go back and forth and his
Yeah.
whatever. And oh, of course there's a woman, so that's even more complicated. But
Yeah.
it's It's just something that literally just came up like today on Twitter that
Yeah.
like I'm hoping that this discussion becomes more and more because I'm hoping
Yeah.
that this kind of TV, I mean, I think it's been most pervasive in television,
Right.
because it's easier to write. I mean, it
Yeah.
just simply is easier to write a bad character. And it gets, for me, it gets tired. It's, like again, to go back to Reacher, where it's just like
Mm.
he's a genuinely good character who does
Hmm.
bad things.
Yeah.
He does illegal things. He does things that he should go to jail. He is an anti-hero. He is an
Yeah.
anti-hero in the classic, you can almost say Bruce Willis way. Like
Yeah.
I can literally can't think of a Bruce Willis character that isn't an anti-hero.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is, I mean, like, I think no better than anybody else, he defined that role. Like, if anything in Bruce Willis's career comes about that you talk about, what did he do
Yeah.
as an actor? Is he defined the anti-hero when it comes in cinema?
Yeah.
And I don't think that even he ever was one of these types of characters. I can't remember him. He was a villain
Yeah. No.
in the bank robber film with
Bandits.
Billy Bob Thornton, yeah, Bandits. And even there, like, I don't think that he was that complicated. No one would want to be him. He wasn't cruel
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever, especially when he was bad. And it's been this fascinating kind of speed run for the last 20 years since Sopranos, where it's just like
Yeah.
everyone remembers the massive blockbuster success of The Sopranos and
Yeah.
how many years that show ruled the, what we used to call the water cooler
Yeah.
conversation. And we're like, okay, well, how do we copy it? And it's just like,
Yeah.
well, you write well, there was good writing. You have
Yeah.
interesting characters. You have good actors. You have a lead that is incredible. Like, I mean, that
Yeah.
was, I think I like James Gandolfini from other films,
Yeah.
but like that role, it's hard to hate that show as much as I want to hate it because of what
Yeah.
it's done to cinema, or what it's done to TV shows and kind of
Yeah.
define, because James Gandolfini is just so fucking good
Yeah.
um at what he does. And I've been over the last, I think, a couple of years, I've had like kind of a reappreciation of Sopranos, which is a show that I watched the first season of and then ended up hating,
Yeah.
because of this kind of thing where I'm just like, he's a bad person. I don't want to watch
Yeah.
a show about a bad person. Kind of the same reason why I stopped watching Seinfeld, I
Yeah.
think, as well. So I was like, these are bad people. I don't
Yeah, well,
enjoy this.
I had that experience with It's Always Sunny. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I watched it for a while. I enjoyed it for a while.
Yeah.
And then like every 6 episodes they feel the need to like one up themselves.
Yeah.
And just like at a certain point I got to the point where I'm like, yeah, but like you're pushing the boundary again and these people are so shitty. I still haven't forgiven them from the last time.
Yeah. You see,
Um
it's interesting with that show because
mhm.
I have never binged that show at all. I've never watched more than one episode at
Which
a
is how
time.
I engaged with it. Like, to be
You
fair,
binged it?
I binged like
Yeah.
4 seasons and then I was
I
like,
think
oh
you
my God, I
can't
need to
do
stop.
that. I think
Yeah.
I think it is something very distinct with this because I think that this show is actually the example of, in modern society,
It's the
how
Fight
you
Club
do.
version. Like
Yeah.
it very
It
much
because
is.
these characters are genuinely terrible. They just
Right.
are terrible. And there is no redeeming them. There is
Right.
no anything. And I don't think that for the most part their audience goes, I want to be like him.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be like him. I mean, like,
Yeah.
there's not, none of them succeed. This is not the Wolf of Wall Street where it's just like, which
Yeah.
is, again, I mean, like one of the bigger examples that I've cited before or mentioned
Right.
before of this thing, where it's just like, oh no, you get to have this, great, it's a true life story because
Right.
these people do get this thing. But like, if you just continually portray him as like, oh, he had this cocaine binge and then he got the gore, he got Margot Robbie,
Yeah.
and then, oh, the worst case scenario is that finally he goes to jail, and he goes to a tennis court jail, and
Yeah.
then he gets a Martin Scorsese film about him based on the book. So literally you're paying probably 50 cents of your movie ticket is going to this dude,
Yeah.
whatever the percentage, whatever it works out to be. And
And
so
you
it's
get
just like,
and wasn't the book written by the Blindside guy? Or am I misremembering?
no, wasn't the book written by him? I thought the
Maybe,
book
maybe.
was written by was Leo's character.
Oh, maybe.
Um,
I haven't watched that. I watched it that one time, and I'm just like, I hate everything about this, and I'm never looking at it again.
Yeah. It isn't, and it's again one of those films that like I think it's, I think that there's a version of watching The Joker
Yeah,
or even Wolf of Wall Street where I can respect both of them, not like them because they're just not films that I
yeah,
necessarily would like. I think the way that they're made,
right,
and the characters, or not the way that they're made, but like the characters mainly, like the way that the character arc goes.
right.
But I can respect that Scorsese did a very good job, and that The Joker is a film that people would like.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
just don't. I mean, there's that version. There's many films
yeah,
like that I can watch and I go, I don't like this, but I can see why people might.
right. Yeah, exactly.
But combined with the fact that the kind of basically, I'd have a very hard time believing that that the writer director or whatever of Joker didn't kind of delve into the kind of incel behavior and kind of
Oh, for sure.
and figure out a way to kind of glorify it in a way that he probably thinks he's very smart and thinks that he was just like, haha, making these
Yeah,
characters think they're good people, but they're actually bad people, but actually just makes them good people,
yeah,
which is, yeah. It's like a weird, like, sometimes you're criticizing
yeah,
something in journalism, you walk this very fine line of like platforming something versus criticizing it. And a
right.
lot of times you're actually just platforming Alex Jones, you're platforming these
Yeah,
terrible figures, as opposed to when you think you're criticizing, you're actually making them look bad.
yeah,
But yeah.
and you get that in the entertainment space a
Yeah.
lot too. Like, so many people, especially like we're all on new social media platforms. We're all starting new accounts. Like, you don't need to go on Threads and share every
Yeah.
shitty thing that Elon Musk does. Because like
Yeah.
he spent $40 billion to make sure that everybody over on Twitter sees all the shitty things he does.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to do that for him. And like you're absolutely, you're adding nothing. All you're doing is platforming him. You're giving him what he wants. Um and so like I see that all the time, and we see that in the entertainment space all the time. There's always some like C-list over the hill comic book artist who's complaining like, I don't get work anymore because all my my jobs all got taken by
Yeah.
girls. Um and it's like, were you reporting on this guy day before yesterday? Does anybody care? Like, when was the last time you wrote an article that mentioned this guy? He's not a
Yeah.
serious person. He's not a
Yeah.
factor in the, like, just don't give that fire oxygen, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Be nice.
we got like a couple little things that we missed on our list, and I know we
Oh, okay.
absolutely have to go to sleep.
Yeah.
But I did want to talk about the Roku thing real quick before we went to bed,
Yeah.
especially because this is like a month old now at least. I
Yeah.
remember when it came through. Um, but Roku is filed a patent for a way to deliver dynamic ads through
Mhm.
HDMI cables. Um, I don't know how that's going to be different from all the many ads that Roku already delivers uh,
Yeah.
on a variety of, like, there's ads on your homepage, there's ads on all your apps. But I will say it's one of those things where I'm like, when I go get my new TV, like that, I'm not imminently, but like when my TV gets to the point where it needs to be
Yeah.
replaced, I feel like I'm gonna have to go out of my way to find a dumb TV,
Yeah.
because like all of these smart devices are just getting more and more user hostile.
Hmm.
And like I I'm willing, I am willing to pay a little bit more to not have my entire life inundated with ads.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I've no matter how much I don't want to spend money, I never tell my kids no if they're like, "Can we have 2.99 to buy the no ads on this app?"
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's a valuable thing to
Yeah.
me, because it
That's a
like,
value add
yeah.
very easily. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so like to me it's just like, I see that and it just makes me like Roku less. It makes me absolutely not want to buy a Roku TV. I already don't want to buy a uh an Amazon TV. Like, I have a Fire TV that I got for like $70. Um, and that's like you know what you're getting into. You're buying the cheap TV, and then they're gonna like advertise at you because that's what it's about.
Yeah.
But like to me, I'm like, no, in that TV is in my bedroom. Like the kids don't really use it. It's out of the way. We don't use it. It's like I that's fine. Like I can take that hit. But like on our main TV, I'm just like, no, I will not like turn on the TV and immediately have you start blaring a commercial at me.
Yeah.
Like and so I'm like, I feel like I'm getting to be more and more like for a while it felt like I was just like being fun and silly with all my retro stuff.
Yeah.
Um, it's like, oh, isn't it funny that Russ has a VCR on his desk? You know? Uh, but I feel like I've reached the point now where I'm just like, no, everything sucks. And if I have older devices or if I go out of my way to find less feature rich devices, then like at least I'm not like property of one of these companies that just like because again like you can pay $7,000 for a top of the line amazing Samsung TV
Yeah.
and every single preference that's like hey we're going to sell your data to people is toggled on by default and you have to spend a bunch of time going into settings and turning them all off. There's this one dude on YouTube and I can't remember his name and he's like kind of a nut. He's like he owns like a computer repair shop in the Bronx or something. And he's constantly like doing videos where he talks about these kinds of issues, talks about like how you don't actually own any of your digital movies because you're just buying a license and like whatever. But like he had a thing the other week where like you buy this expensive I think it was a Samsung TV, I might be wrong, but like this expensive TV, it stops working and it's like okay well that's fine because I have a 3-year warranty and then you call and like this guy's ring cam or like nanny cam or something he like the guy was like hey the service tech was like hey can you go downstairs and like turn off the fuse and then turn it back on so that we can get everything completely cleared. And so the homeowner goes down and he does that and as soon as the guy's out of the room the service tech takes like a razor and just pokes a little hole in the LCD.
Yeah.
And then when the guy comes back, he's like, "Oh, here's your problem. It's physical damage. It's a puncture. Like your warranty doesn't cover that."
Yeah.
And it's just like
I've seen this. Yeah.
And it's like one of those like, and that's obviously it's the extreme example, but it's also one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's the extreme example, but like the reason that we're talking about it is that like everything else is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that like entertainment like is the last thing. I mean, one of the biggest things that I, like is like one of the good things about, Disney Plus and Hulu, being able to even pay at least into the kind of ad-free range of things is the fact that like the children is the fact that kids aren't getting like bombarded with ads on a continual basis. Like I just remember I was watching my niece Elizabeth, and we were I was watching her in a hotel room, and we were just watching TV that was whatever, and I was just like, oh my God, I forgot how horrible kids ads are on whatever it was,
Unreal.
Disney or something, whatever it was, whatever kids channel it was in the hotel room. And because of like how obnoxious they were, and she's a 5-year-old, she has had I've had I think you did Hulu Plus with the no ads or whatever for ages. So I mean like or Disney, that the bundle there.
I pay for the Disney Plus bundle with no ads
and like how long it's been, and she's just like what these ads are, and she's just like watching it. You can see like the eyes glaze over, which I mean like I remember as a kid as well. Like it was just like, oh, that's a thing that you wanted. And then like the next day you hear like, oh, I want this thing, and it's just not something that I've ever heard from this child, that she wants a very particular thing. And I'm like, holy fucking shit. Like,
Oh yeah.
I'm like, okay, I have to keep up my Hulu Plus without ads, or the Disney ad without ads thing, because God forbid. But also, like, it's just one of those, like, if there's no way, I mean, obviously, I mean, and thankfully, thanks to Bluey and thanks to like a lot of the kind of the way that TV shows are now, is that they're
Right.
not, it's not He-Man and it's not GI Joe, it's not TV shows that are created out of advertising products,
Yeah.
it's they're created out of products. They want to sell you to Disneyland, and they want to sell you all the things. I mean, like, there's no escape from it. I mean,
Yeah.
even Bluey has its own line of everything now or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's not it there's it's not the same as like when we were kids, of like, no, it was inherent in the TV show. The
Oh
TV
yeah.
show was a 22-minute long advertisement for you to go to Toys R Us and buy the product.
Yeah. They had to legislate that out of
Yeah,
existence, and now
yeah,
all those rules are gone.
yeah. And but it's still something that, like, at least you can kind of, buy your way out of if
Yeah.
you decide to spend money in that way. But it's just like, if what I'm kind of reading through, and what they want to really do is, even if you're watching a DVD and you hit pause, and the
Mhm.
moment there's basically inactivity on the HDMI cable, that it will feed an ad to you. Which, at least, I love my Roku TV. Like, this is the first thing that I've ever seen in, I can't remember how many years I've had Roku TVs. I think this is my
Right.
second one having, and I've always loved it. It has all the apps that I need. It's simple to use. I get that there's ads, but they're not really, they're
Yeah.
off to the side. I very rarely accidentally clicked on anything. I enjoy, like, Roku City is something that's actually kind of fun. I remember I was watching it.
Yeah. I think it's
I was
fun.
literally watching it with somebody sitting next to me, and I was like, boom, boom. I was being able to name all the things, and it was like a fun thing. And it's like, it's a fun advertising thing. I'm
Yeah.
okay. I'm truly, genuinely okay with that.
Yeah.
Even though I bought the television, I paid what other televisions cost. The television any better. I'm like, I'm not quite sure why. I get that there's probably some operating cost or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something. I'm sure there's some reason. I don't really fucking care. There's certain, like, things that you just kind of go, "Okay, I'm gonna okay with it. I'm
Yeah.
okay." But if they start, like, if I'm watching a DVD or anything, and there's like immediately an ad cutting through that isn't through Paramount or the app or the Hulu app, or
Right.
something that I'm not paying for separately, I'm not going to be a fan of this. Or if I'm watching with something on my laptop, streaming through that, and I hit pause, and then there's ads on the screen, it's like, okay, well, this is the bar. This is the
Yeah.
bar where I go, this is over. Because I can't, if you can't escape ads, even when you buy a physical DVD or
Yeah.
whatever, which has ads on it. Most of them still have ads, some kind of. I mean, people forget, I think. I was going on a tangent about one of the, why theatrical experiences have gotten so terrible. Even
Mhm.
though I know you're not, but I'm like, I'm a huge. I want to see film. I want to see very particular films. I would love to see all
Right.
films in theaters, but I can't afford that. So I'd love to see,
Yeah.
like, there's like, I want to see Godzilla. I want to see, Furiosa. I want to see very particular films in theaters at this point.
Right.
But the Regal Cinema that is about 10 minutes away from me, maybe another 4 minutes with, like, parking, and then
Right.
because it's still in a mall. It's in a completely and totally dead mall, which is its own story along with it. But I don't leave if the movie's at 5 p.m., I don't leave this house until 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Because even though, the few times I've gotten there, like, on time or early, there's 20 minutes of ads, the pure just fucking ads
Right. Not
beforehand.
trailers.
And then I
Yeah.
get there, and then there's another 5 minutes of ads past the screen time, and then starts 25 minutes of trailers,
Yeah.
which I used to love, and I used to think that was awesome. But the internet exists now, and so I've
Yeah.
seen all of these trailers, because they're nothing new. They don't release trailers like they used to, with, like, Star Wars and stuff like that, exclusive. There's not even a theatrical version of the trailer anymore. It's just like, I saw those. And so it's like, I can leave the house when the movie's supposed to start. I can park, I can walk through the mall and go up 2 escalators, and like walk into the movie, buy the ticket, buy popcorn, soda, and then find my seat. And I still only then do I reach the 5 extra or 10 minutes of or 5 minutes extra of Regal Cinema ads, because for
Yeah.
some reason I need Regal Cinema ads because I might forget what cinema I'm in for those 5 minutes. And it's no longer like a fun little, the Regal Cinema used to be that, like,
Yeah.
amusement park ride or whatever. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
that. It's just a fucking ad. It's just a straight up fucking ad. And it is endless. It's like one of the things that I'm like, I don't enjoy going to the movies anymore, almost because of that, is because it is literally, there's 60 minutes basically of ads before the movie.
Hmm.
If you get there when you should get there, which is,
Right.
you should get there a couple minutes before the movie starts, in quotes. And so it's no longer enjoyable. So if they're trying to do that with the theatrical, um with the home theatrical
Yeah.
release, and it's just like, okay, well, that's the way you destroy movies. That's just like
Well,
where
and it's
you end
just
it.
that it feels like they have no plan. Like, and that's the big thing
Mm,
is that, like,
it's to make money. That's it. That's
well,
the
yeah,
only
but you know
plan.
what I mean? Like, there's no,
Yeah.
like, for years when you had the video store market and you had to deal with like production and distribution and all these kind of,
Yeah.
it's like there were things in place that made you have to consider,
Yeah.
what does your window look like?
Yeah.
What is your, you know what I mean? What
Hmm.
are your holiday titles? What are your whatever? And so, like, it wasn't just like an arbitrary, like, okay, 6 weeks and
Yeah.
that's all you need to, you know what I mean? And so, like, to me, like, a big part of the problem right now isn't just things are going to streaming too fast,
Yeah.
because, like, there are things like, you talked about movies that flop, and it's like, yeah, if you have a cheap movie that flops, like, send it straight to streaming afterwards.
Hmm.
And you've seen some of the movies that had some success that way, like The Flash and Black Adam both, like, went straight to streaming because they were disasters.
Yeah.
And Flash didn't recoup anything off of it, but Black Adam did a bunch of money in its first couple of weeks.
Mhm.
And so, like, I don't think it's like, I think it's just that nobody's thinking about these things outside of just like there, it's all very reactive. It's
Yeah.
like nobody has a plan in advance. It's just like, let's see how the opening weekend goes before we even consider what our
Mhm.
plan is. It's like, no, you should have like three plans that like are contingent on how the movie performs after like
Yeah.
1, 3, and 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, you should have put thought into this before you put the movie out there into the universe to flop.
Here's the last thing I'd say on this is
Hmm.
that we don't have, and it's something that I have asked questions about and I've looked around and I can't find any answers for, is
Uh-huh.
that when we say that Furiosa, let's just use that as the example,
Right.
is gonna flop, it's gonna end up making, let's say it's gonna make $100 million at the box office at the end of the day,
Right.
when it finally goes streaming, but it's gonna get a streaming deal
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
at, I assume, HBO, or HBO, because HBO is part of
Mhm.
production. How is that considered? Like, if like, let's, talk about Killers of the Flower Moon. If
Yeah.
that film didn't make, I think it made its money back in the theaters, if I remember
Right.
correctly. If that film didn't, oh, or if it, like, or we're just talking about that, what does, when we talk about film budgets, like when we talk about gross and everything like that,
Hmm.
what do we consider that? What do we consider the fact that it's sitting in Apple now,
Yeah.
the only place in the planet that you can watch this film unless you want to buy it physically, which then that money goes, at least partially, go to Apple as well.
Right.
How do we consider that budget? How much did Apple pay into the production? And basically, it's not a loss if they don't get the money
Right.
back. It is part of the budget of Apple Plus. The budget is not in that place anymore. And
Yeah.
it's not, and it's literally just, it's wild because obviously there's all these people, like when Furiosa says the weekend, the projection, the projected weekend budget is, it's only going to make $25 million. And I go, I can't imagine that this film, this massive budget, $160 million film, the last film did pretty well, even though I was actually looking at the budget or the gross, and it actually didn't do as well as I remember it doing, but it still was like, oh no, this is a film that we talk about today in the film, in the same way that we talk about, Die Hard and in other big action films and things like that, as like part of cinema. And we don't have any discussion on whatever whatsoever, is that there's very clearly, I can't imagine that there's not, was a pre-contract set into when that film got a $160 million budget, that Warner Brothers was like, okay, well, we know that $30 million, goes to, basically is written off within 10 million people or whatever is going to resubscribe or subscribe for 1 month or do whatever it is going to be. Well, I don't know how those budgets work for HBO, for Max.
Right.
And the fact that we're just straight up, no one in entertainment journalism, as far as I can tell, like, is talking about this. I've not seen a single fucking person. I've not seen Scott. It's something I actually asked Scott Mendelson on Twitter and he didn't respond, which, I mean, like, you got a 5,000. I'm not like,
Yeah.
It's not like I'm like accused. I got you. But it is
Yeah.
something that I'm like, I genuinely want to know how that works, so that when we have actual adult conversations about, well, these films, okay, so this film cost $160 million. The ad budget for it was another $50 million or whatever it was. So it really needs to make $230 million to be considered
Right.
not breaking, basically breaking even. But it's just like, no, but when you're going to spend, if Warner Brothers or Apple or Paramount or whoever is going to spend, as a production company on their production side, is going to spend $160 million or $200 million in a film, they obviously have written that into they're the first people that are going to get that as a streaming thing.
Right.
Because no shit. But like the fact that no one's talking about that, we only want to talk about, oh, this film bombed, this film bombed, this film bombed, this film bombed, because Marvel doesn't. We don't even, I mean, fuck me, we don't even talk about it when Disney does it. Disney, their last Disney film, whatever, the last Marvel film makes, let's say it breaks even.
Right.
And then it just drops. The only place that's going to be for at least several months is going to be Disney Plus or Hulu, whatever version, whatever it comes out. That's why I subscribe to, as an adult, that's why I subscribe to Disney, is because I know the Marvel shit is going to be there and I can watch it. And like, we don't talk about that at all. I literally can't. I mean, maybe you know better. Like, I literally can't find any articles that talk about this as an issue. I mean, never mind the fact that we also, because we talk about like Atlas and we talk about all these other films that we just don't, we just trust that, oh, Netflix says that this many streams happened and this many hours
or even
spent
just
on there.
Netflix says that they made money on this.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, then that's considered into the budget and should be considered into the budget of any other film. Why don't we have the same discussion when we talk about every other fucking film that comes out? Like Madam Web. Like Madam Web is a great example. I mean, I have a harder time believing that that's gonna like really genuinely make its money back. But I have the cheapest, like, garbage level subscription for Netflix. I can't watch that film.
Yeah.
It's on a higher level. It's the only film on Netflix, as far as I can tell, that I can't watch. And it was literally the reason why I subscribed to Netflix to begin with, which is hilarious. And I was just like, okay, well, I'm not paying whatever the ridiculous, like, because Netflix now is getting rid of all their lower level. And it's going to be like, basically, it's going to be the lowest level is going to be like 15, 19 bucks to subscribe, which is beyond my max of things.
Yeah, I'm actively setting up my Plex server, and I'm like backing up all my movies and stuff so that I can just be like, you know what? Like I have kids who make it really hard for me to drop subscriptions because like I have special needs kids who don't understand like that their
things are temporary.
Routine might have to change.
Yeah.
I get, whatever. But like I'm just like I'm just reaching the point where I just can't do it. Like I'm just reaching a point where I'm like I cannot justify the amount of, and like so often it's like they just won't open something for weeks at a time. And then like if it has lapsed or I've closed it or it's whatever, or even if the app logged us out, it's like it's suddenly a crisis when they want to use it for the first time in 3 months. And I'm just like, you haven't used it in 3 months. That's why it's like this.
Yeah, I know.
But I'm very much like I'm setting up, I'm actively, because I have to replace my computer. It's starting to die. And so I'm like taking this old desktop and turning it into a Plex server. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to have a wireless media server where I have a shitload of stuff backed up and basically create my own little streaming service and do my best to have everything I can legally have on there for the kids.
Yeah.
But, all right. Any final notes before we?
I do enjoy it, by the way. Like, as I was on Variety looking at one of the articles, and I clicked on a link because I was like, oh, speaking of, like, this would actually be a good thing to finish this on, and it's price chart for leading subscription video streaming services updated with new max prices.
Right.
And then I click on it, and it's behind Variety Intelligence platform. It's behind their VIP Plus platform. So that's the subscription.
Yeah. Which, again, I get it, and I try not to, like, begrudge people, especially because, like, Variety has highly paid reporters who are experts in their blah 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 blah. So, like, I try not to be shitty about it. I see so many people, like, Syracuse.com functionally operates at a loss as far as I can tell. I can't imagine they're making money. And, like,
I think they're doing
every
fine,
single story on Instagram, there's somebody in there who's like, save you a click, and I'm just like, but that's how this goes away forever.
Yeah.
Like, just so you know.
Nobody cares. That's the thing, is that nobody cares.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it is something that, like, I remember having a problem with when it comes to pirating and that sort of thing for ages. And now it's everything, because all information should be free. But I mean, it is one of those, like, look at, man, I get it. I pay $25 a month for different podcasts.
Yeah.
Because every single one is $5 a month. And it's like, I guess I get, each one has 2 hours a week of content. And I'm like, yeah, that's worth $5. Definitely. But it's just like, that's $25. And then I, because I'm the journalism, everything, I'm like, I have, like, probably another $25 in newspaper subscriptions. And then, God forbid, I mean, I did a big cutback on, like, between Patreon and Substack. I have another $25. But it's just like $75 right there.
Oh,
like, I paid less money. I've never paid that much money for cable. And I'm not even getting into the discussion of, like, my aunt will never let me give up my Peacock network subscription. My 5-year-old niece will never let me give up my Disney Plus subscription. And it's just like, and I'm like, fucking hell. Like, and then it's just like, oh, I can get rid of Apple Plus. And it's like, yeah, that's like, okay, is that really going to make much of a big difference? But it means now that I can never watch this show. I have to, like, resubscribe and do everything anyway. But yeah.
No, I I have certain things that I, like, cancel because it's like I never fucking use Max. Yeah. And so I recently added it because I wanted to watch The Girls on the Bus and Conan O'Brien Must Go.
Yeah.
And so, like, when Conan O'Brien Must Go premiered, I bought it for a month, and now I'm canceled again.
Yeah.
But, like, and it's the same thing with, like, Apple TV Plus. It's like, I was just coming back when they had Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
And now, like, that show's over, and so I'm canceling, and then I'm coming back when there's new Fraggle Rock. It's like there's always, like, one thing.
I know, that's the thing, is it's like, and it's like, I used to, I mean, what I did for a while, like, when there was, like, there was Amazon Prime, and then there was the networks. I was like, okay, I'm just buying these shows, but, like, there's not a I also then realized that I'm like, oh, I bought all these shows. Like, I think I have the first 2 seasons of Luther, 2 or 3 seasons of Luther I paid for. And I'm like, I paid $2.99 episode or whatever, $1.99 episode it was. And I'm like, I don't know where the fuck that is. Like, I don't ever look at the paid.
And, like, the Prime Video app is a disaster in terms of looking at what you've purchased, because they just throw everything that's available to you into your library. And it's like, no, what I want to see is, like, what I've actually purchased. And a lot of the time it'll be a thing where it's like, okay, so I was watching Cougar Town when it was new and live, and I would buy episodes. And then at one point they started streaming Cougar Town for free, so I stopped buying. And so I have all these seasons where it's like I randomly, instead of owning the season, it's like, oh, I have episodes 1 through 4, 6, 9, and 11.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's a totally sane thing to have just sitting in my media library, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing, I mean, literally the last thing we'll talk about, because it's already 12:30. But is that I was just in Portugal, and I thought, okay, cool. We're staying at basically like not an Airbnb, but we're renting a place.
Right.
And um I have all these movies. I have all these streaming services. I know all of these places exist in Portugal and
Yeah.
Europe as whatever. No. Voodoo has no access to the 600 films that I have
Yeah.
on Vudu, Fandango, whatever. I can't watch anything that I was on there. I
Yeah.
had to watch everything I watched through. And also, like anybody who's listening, God forbid, this far into the episode, VPNs can go fuck themselves. Like
Yeah.
they don't work well for the streaming stuff. Like maybe Netflix, maybe a very
2/3 of
particular kind of thing.
them can
Yeah.
detect it and kick you out.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also like when you're in like Portugal, which is like a not France, not Britain,
Yeah.
not America, but it was wild because it was just like I was trying to like, oh, I'm sitting here with, we're just hanging
Yeah.
out like at the end of the workday or whatever, let's just watch something. And it's like, okay, I figured out that I have basically had like maybe like 60 films through Amazon Prime bought because of the Voodoo kind of like that
Yeah, the thing,
crossover
like
movie
crossover,
thing.
yeah.
And so it was just like, here's the films we can watch
Yeah.
because nothing I own, even though I'm paying all this money for Apple Plus
Yeah.
didn't exist, Netflix didn't exist, like all
Yeah.
these things didn't exist. And so it's just like, oh wow, even the films you buy, you don't actually own in that way.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
and not even like in some like magical, like, oh, voodoo goes away, all these things
Yeah.
we worry about. It's like, no, if you just literally go to a different country, which
Yeah.
is just wild to me. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like I paid for
It's
this movie, I own it, theoretically own it. I
yeah.
bought it, I paid the like purchase price for it, not a rental. And like I'm just going to a different country. I'm like, if I own a physical DVD, but I guess I need to take the physical DVD player with me.
Yeah. I
So
mean, you
big guy.
can still like get one of those little ones for the car and then just hook it up to the TV. But like
Yeah.
it's an insane amount of work to have to do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Fun times.
all right. And any final thoughts before we wrap?
If you get a chance, go see Furiosa in theaters. But
Mhm.
also like fucking Christ, if you have Netflix, watch the the magicalness of that's a word I'm gonna make right now.
Magicality.
Of Godzilla. You're it is so fucking good.
Yeah.
Do not watch it with subtitles though.
Yeah.
Do not. I've listened to a little bit of the like oh my God, it's so fucking bad. It's very bad. Watch it with subtitles because you got to get the passion of the actors are actually quite good. It's not like you're thinking about if you're not a Godzilla person, like you've watched the old ones or whatever. It's not
Yeah.
like the old ones where it's just like, oh, the acting is not great. And it's kind of funny. This is a dramatic film. If you don't cry, I'm going to question your whether you're Patrick Bateman a little bit too much. But yeah, anyway. Yeah.
All right. On that note, be back here by noon on the 5th day for more Emerald City Video. And always remember to rewind your cassettes. Good night.